It depends on how each group teaches itself to treat those who are not in the group. Christianity says, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you. Judaism says, be nice to the stranger because you were once a stranger in Egypt. Even Buddhism has, karma, which goes around, comes around, but Islam is aggressive. And it has a track record of coming into countries, taking advantage of their tolerance, and then eliminating the tolerance that the community that was tolerant. Like Muhammad went into Medina because it was nice and tolerant Jews, but then in 5 years there wasn't a Jew left in Medina.
Wow. AmericanMinute.com. Great history about Bill Federer. Bill, as always, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
AmericanMinute.com. Folks, they're destroying the foundation, getting people to hate the Judeo-Christian worldview that's the foundation of our republic, the laws of nature. Nature is God. And when they make enough people and enough generations uncomfortable with that, the people inside this own nation of ours will desire to overthrow our form of government. That's what the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America, and the Islamists are up to, folks. And it appears as though your tax dollars through the American History Museum in D.C. is helping to do it. Again, thanks to President Trump and his administration for leading the charge to stop this brainwashing of America's children at our expense, both financially and worldview-wise and liberty and freedom-wise. We'll keep you posted on this developing story as more of the video clips come out from today's hearings. We'll be back tonight with Worldview Report, our nightly newscast, and then Brandon House Live.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Daughters of the American Revolution started in 1890 in response to Sons of the American Revolution, which had started the year prior. These are biological, hereditary groups where if you can prove that you are linked to an actual soldier who fought in the Revolutionary War, you are eligible for membership. Now, Daughters of the American Revolution has become much bigger than Sons of the American Revolution. They focus on patriotism, education, a love of history. But in recent years, you've had the leadership has said that they would like to sort of surreptitiously allow men to join the group so long as those men claim to be women, which is not a scientific reality.
And so, of course, they had this vote on, I think it was on Friday. And what was the result? What is there's a lot of back and forth, of course, between the two sides within the DAR. But what was the effective result of the vote?
So a couple of years ago, the leadership kind of quietly changed the bylaws to say that men could join Daughters of the American Revolution so long as they claim to be women. You've had various chapters and other groups trying to say, this is ridiculous. We are literally the Daughters of the American Revolution, and this denial of reality does not fit with our charter. So the most recent effort was just this week, a group of women tried to say, it doesn't matter if, for an organization based on an ability to prove biological relationship to a soldier, it doesn't make sense to say if you can have a state alter your birth certificate to say that you're a female when you're a male, that therefore you're eligible for this women-only organization.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on World YouTube and our X Spaces simulcast, folks. Well, for generations, as you just heard, the Daughters of the American Revolution have stood as a proud symbol of our patriotism. Their motto, God, home, and country, and their mission of historic preservation, education, and patriotism have guided the organization for over a century. But today, the DAR is facing serious accusations of going woke. Members who simply want to preserve the organization's traditional standards are being intimidated, blackballed, and suppressed by national and state officers. Chapters that push back are reportedly cut off from new member referrals and genealogical support. The group is in a full-blown governance crisis. Chapter proposed bylaw amendments have been rejected by the board for 3 years straight. This is not new. It's been going on for a while. And now the National Board of Management is trying to make it impossible to challenge them, proposing to raise the number of chapters needed to call a special meeting and the number needed to propose bylaws changes by 1,200%. That's right, 1,200%. And at the recent 135th Continental Congress, attempts to address these problems were blocked, as you just heard. Live stream access was denied, procedural maneuvers limited debate, and a key resolution failed amid reports of voting irregularities. Well, fighting back is a growing group that's called Daughters Advocating for Restoration. They now have over 100 chapters signed on for a special meeting this October, and they have support in Congress through Representative Ben Klein's DAR Integrity Act, which would amend the congressional charter to clearly define the word woman. And joining me now is Laura McDonald from Daughters Advocating for Restoration, and I believe a member of the DAR itself. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you for having me, and thank you to our mutual friends who connected us.
Oh, you bet. You bet. We appreciate them. That's what makes this country work, is friends and family. That's what Americans are all about. So the Daughters of the American Revolution, tell folks, I mean, we covered it a little bit. It was set up by women because the Sons of the American Revolution was established 1 year and excluded women. It's my understanding to do that. But what do they do? What does the organization do from the perspective of its members?
We are a service organization. So when I first joined the DAR, I didn't realize that. I thought it was just something that you joined because you had patriotic pride. I was just so happy that I could claim that I had a heritage of a patriot. So when my mother and my sister and I joined in 2018, I didn't really realize how big and the DAR is and what its purpose was. And we are a service organization. We go out into the community doing various things. We raise awareness about various patriotic things going on in our communities. We help veterans. We help women's shelters. We go to schools. We do programs. Graveside cleanings, Reads Across America, all of those things are what the DAR does. I'm probably leaving off a lot of things, but those are the things that I have participated in.
One of the things that I mentioned in the monologue was genealogical support being cut off. What is genealogical support?
So in order to be a member of the DAR, you have to prove your own biological line to a patriot. So the bylaws say that any woman 18 years of age or older who can prove lineal descent of a patriot is eligible for membership. So in order to prove your heritage, your lineal descent, you have to have documents that go back. And now, that DNA is becoming more prevalent. I know the DAR does accept DNA results, but the genealogical research, and I'm not a registrar. I didn't do my own. My mother did ours, but I know that it is it's grueling. It's tedious, and these women who want to become members of the DAR, they need help. And like our local chapter has a registrar, and she's fantastic. She does a lot of the work, but there are some chapters that still need help. Like, say, for example, there's a patriot that's not been actually proven to have been a patriot. You need, what they call genies and registrars that are at the higher levels who have a lot more experience than, say, somebody at the local level to help prove that, or to prove that an applicant does have a link to one of these patriots.
So is there like a repository of the documents somewhere?
Oh, yes.
That folks use?
Oh, yes. And the genealogy side of this, I am woefully ignorant on, so you'll have to forgive me, but I do know that the DAR does keep just copious amounts of genealogical records. They have a library, and people clamor to get in there to be able to find information, to be able to link themselves to a patriot. So So like right now, I'm only linked to one Patriot, but there are women who have Patriot pins that are, down to their feet. They're so long. And those are the pins that, I'm personally interested in, to be able to link to many Patriots. So, but the answer to your question is yes, they have just an enormous repository of genealogical records.
And where is the library located at?
Washington, D.C.
Oh, it is I was wondering if it was in Washington, D.C. I assume in the headquarters of the DAR?
Yes, sir.
And does the organization pay rent for their headquarters?
No, sir. We own it. We own that building.
Oh, really? Inside Washington, D.C.?
Yes, sir. And as a matter of fact, we used to be able to claim that we were the only women's organization to hold as much property as we do. And they still make that claim, but it's a little bit, since we now have men who are members of the DAR, we can't really truthfully make that claim anymore. But yes, we do own those properties. And we were, you'll have to forgive me too, because there's a lot of nuance in it, but I do know we have a congressional charter. And I think that charter is what gave us the ability to purchase the property there in Washington, D.C. back in the early 1900s.
Yeah. Most like veterans organizations, they have the official ones have a congressional charter too. So tell us how this issue started. I mean, I use the generic term woke, and you just mentioned men are now being allowed to become members. And it's my understanding that men pretending to be women are allowed to become members of the DAR now. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. It is accurate.
And how did that come about?
Well, I can tell you how I came about the knowledge and then the progression. So in 2023, there was a bylaw amendment that was adopted that added additional anti-discrimination language to our bylaws. So there was already a clause that said that you cannot discriminate against an eligible applicant. But in 2023, there was a proposed amendment that was adopted that added additional language that says you can't discriminate based on race, religion, sexual orientation, age, disability, or any other characteristic protected by applicable law. That last phrase is key. So at that point in time, and still to this day, they talk out of both sides of their mouth. And I want to be careful, too, to make sure I don't mean to be disparaging of our leaders or the DAR. We love the DAR. I'm just being truthful about what we're up against here. It's a very confusing scenario. So on the one hand, they've told us that bylaw amendment had absolutely nothing to do with gender identity, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's just pause right there. So in 2023, I asked my mother, I just had an epiphany one day because I was going to give a presentation to our local Rotary Club about Wreaths Across America. Mm-hmm. And I was going to introduce myself and talk about the DAR. And I was going to make a joke and tell the guys in the audience, look, fellas, this is only for women. But as soon as I was writing out my little speech, I thought about Rachel Levine, the former health secretary. And I thought, what are we going to do when somebody like him decides he wants to join the DAR? You know, a prominent public figure who may have lineal descent of a patriot. What are we going to do when he decides he wants to join? And so I immediately asked my mom, do you know anything about this? What would we do? And she said, well, I'm afraid that something like that's already going on. So that's whenever I really learned about this bylaw amendment that was adopted. So that's when I started asking questions in 2023 in earnest, in good faith, trying to figure out, is this something that we actually have to do? Is this a defensive position, or is this an ideological position? That at that point in time, I did not know. So over the course of time, mm-hmm. I've learned that it is indeed an ideological position. And I say that because we uncovered an internal document that was not meant for my eyes or any other rank and file member, but it was for state and national officers. It's an FAQ by the then President General that she put out. And it essentially says that, yes, quote, trans women are eligible for membership. Right? That was the first. And then the next question is, well, if trans women are eligible for membership, then are men eligible for membership? Like somebody like you that doesn't identify as a woman. And the answer was no. And then it goes on to say that a trans woman is not a man. A trans woman lives and identifies as a woman. So whenever I saw that document, I knew that was something that the DAR had put out as like kind of an unofficial official statement, meaning this is how we want you to respond to members when they ask these questions. I knew there was somebody or some bodies, I don't know how many, that have taken an ideological position on this. So to answer your question, when did it start? I know that the first openly trans, or the first man who is openly claims to be trans became a member in 2022. But we've recently found out that it happened as early as 2012. And at this last meeting, Continental Congress, a former President General, who's now an honorary President General, somebody that we have all looked up to and admired very much and respected, took the stage, the microphone, and said that during her administration, she personally reviewed the applicant of what she called a trans daughter. So in my mind, a trans daughter, that's a man. That's somebody she knows as a man because she's referring to him as a trans daughter.
That's right.
And that she had this application and this birth certificate from this individual that said it was a female, but she knows he's a man, right? But this birth certificate says female. Okay. So she went to the genealogical department and said, what do we do about this? And they told her, oh, it's a state certified birth certificate. It's legit. So I don't want to say too much. I don't want to misquote her, but the gist of what she told us was that she faced this situation. She knew it was a man. He had an amended birth certificate and the application was approved. So we know it happened at least as early as 2012 or 2013.
And the bylaws are very strict, right? I mean, if you're a real woman and you can't make the right genealogical connections down throughout history, you're not getting in.
Correct.
Right?
So if you have been adopted,
let me take a quick break right here, and we can pick this up again because I want to get to that question about the law a little bit deeper too, Laura. Okay. We'll be right back with Laura McDonald.
At a certain age, you stop chasing younger. You start protecting what helps you feel steady, strong, and well. Your body's collagen matters. It supports the structure of your skin, joints, and connective tissue. But as the years go by, your body needs more support from the inside. That's where Bella Grace Elixir comes in. Bella Grace Elixir combines Verisol collagen, the world's most clinically proven collagen, with Asteryl astaxanthin and cat's claw in a proprietary blend designed to help support the processes that reconstruct collagen, while also offering antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. And this isn't just for women. It's for men and women who want to age with more confidence, more care, and a daily wellness routine that supports the body from within. One simple elixir, thoughtfully formulated for whole body wellness. Take care of the body that has carried you this far. Order Bella Grace Elixir today at melissahousebg.com.
The irony in what is happening with the Daughters of the American Revolution would be actually laughable if it wasn't so sad. You can't even get into the DAR unless you have a, quote, bloodline descent from an ancestor who aided in achieving American independence. So they make you prove that you're biologically related to a soldier from the American Revolution, but they don't care if you're a biological male joining. Make it make sense. So in 1889, the Sons of the American Revolution were founded, and these group of women wanted to express their patriotism but were being excluded from that group. So they founded the Daughters of the American Revolution in 1890. And now men are openly being welcomed in. Let's backtrack a little. So in July 2023, the DAR sneakily introduced a non-discrimination bylaw amendment at the 132nd Continental Congress. Later that year, the President General at that time, Pamela Wright, said in a statement that transgender women can join DAR. Actually, they've always been allowed to, as long as it says female on their birth certificate, which we all know you can change. And that's when the can of worms busted open. Several DAR chapters have submitted bylaw amendment proposals to define a woman, but they've all been rejected. The group of DAR women even broke off and created their own 501c3 nonprofit called Daughters Advocating for Restoration. It is our prayer that these women will hopefully soon get the justice they deserve, because Representative Ben Cline from Virginia is introducing a bill to restore the Daughters of the American Revolution back to its rightful state as a women's-only organization. Thank you, Representative Cline, for standing for fairness for women and for putting the daughters, not sons pretending to be daughters, back in the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're talking about that organization right there, the Daughters of the American Revolution, because they are allowing men pretending to be women to be full members as Daughters of the American Revolution. It's not an associate membership like, like I can be an associate member of the Republican Women's Club because I'm a man. No, this is full membership declared by the leadership. And eyewitnesses. And my guest today is Laura McDonald, who's a member of the DAR. But also, Laura, are you the founder of the Daughters Advocating for Restoration
Yes,
group
sir.
that's out there?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So before we jump to that group itself, let's talk about the law. You pointed that out about that bylaw amendment that said, according to applicable law, I think is that allow, that bars discrimination. There is no federal law, is there, that says that trans people are can't be discriminated against in like an organization like this, which is a woman's organization, right? I mean, there's no federal law that prohibits that, right?
I'm not an attorney, but no, sir. I would feel very confident to say no, that we have a First Amendment right to freedom of association and freedom of expression. We have actually procured a legal memorandum from the Center for American Liberty. That's a nonprofit that was founded by Harmeet Dillon, who is now the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. Her signature is on that document. It's very robust. It's 14 pages long, along with Attorney Mark Trammell. And they go into detail and cite case law about why they believe the DAR is within its First Amendment rights to continue to exclude men, just as we've done since our founding, no matter what document they submit. But the kicker is that in Washington, D.C., there is something called the District of Columbia Human Rights Act of 1977, and it's got all of these protected characteristics. One of them is transgender. One of them is also sex. So under that act, it says that in places of public accommodation, housing, education, and employment, you cannot discriminate against people with these protected characteristics. So we understand that in DAR's capacity as, a place of public accommodation, our library, our hall, and its capacity as an employer, that of course it is subject to that act. It cannot discriminate, and probably shouldn't. It should not discriminate. It should be merit-based when you're hiring and firing. But what they're now saying is that the DAR, at the meeting last month, during debate, they presented a one-sided legal opinion from an attorney named Samuel R. Bagenstos out of Michigan, and your audience should go look him up. He makes the claim that the DAR is subject to the provisions of that Human Rights Act of the District of Columbia because they have a place of public accommodation and because they are an employer. But he does not address the private membership aspect of the DAR, and he doesn't differentiate between how you can pick and choose which characteristic applies. So, for example, like I said before, sex is also a protected characteristic. So according to that logic, if you keep tracking that logic, if you can't discriminate against somebody that identifies as transgender, which, by the way, how do you confirm that? How does the DAR even know if somebody identifies as transgender? Whenever they go on, is their birth certificate that's submitted? That's a question I have. But then you cannot discriminate against you, Colonel. The DAR can't say that you can't be a member, otherwise they're in violation of that same act. So, and that gets back to what we've been saying about what happened in 2023. They have told us for years that we're spreading misinformation about that bylaw amendment, that it had nothing to do with gender identity. So that phrase, any characteristic protected by applicable law. Well, now I want to say, so So now you're saying the District of Columbia Human Rights Act of 1977, that transgenders are a protected class under that. So if the 2023 amendment had nothing to do with transgenders, why didn't it?
Right. Exactly. That's one of my questions, is so this is a DC law, right? The interesting thing is that the Constitution gives Congress the authority in the District of Columbia, and they only allow home rule, which has resulted in these laws by act of Congress. That's being debated whether that should stand right now, too. And it's just very interesting that they're trying to apply it outside of employment. And quite honestly, I'm a hardcore anti men pretending to be women person. But, I don't believe in discriminating for on job applications, and unless there's something about the position that would preclude that that type of situation. That's the issue. One of the issues that I'm concerned about is that law being misapplied here by the leadership. So tell me about your organization, Daughters Advocating for Restoration, and what type of activities is it involved in? It's not an assumption that you all were created to push back on this. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It was created out of necessity. So, like I said earlier, in 2023, when I first found out about this and was earnestly trying to find out why this was happening, is this an ideological position, or is this, because what we've been told is that on the advice of legal counsel, we have to do this. So back in 2023, I said, well, I'd like to see that counsel. I'd like to see who it was. Who was the attorney or the law firm that provided it, and what was their counsel? I'm not an attorney by any means. I did take a constitutional law class in college, so I have somewhat of an understanding of how these things work. I can read, and I can, understand that kind of stuff. So I wanted to at least see that, and it was either ignored, completely ignored, or responded to with wordy emails that made reference to things that don't apply to us, like Title II of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Title VII. It goes back to what we said before about places of public accommodation, employer-employee relationship things. The answer is Daughters Advocating for Restoration was, first of all, formed as just a Facebook group, as a way to communicate with each other, because we were completely shut down from talking to each other on the DAR social media sanctioned platforms. So each state has a private page that, if you're a member, that you can join and you can collaborate with other members. And I won't get too much into all that because there's a lot of drama involved in it. But the long and short of it is that members were silenced, shut down, told that we could not communicate with each other. We can't bring it up at our chapter. We can't use our member directories to contact each other. And there's also what's called a circularization policy that says that you can't, spread a rumor, and you can't disturb the harmony of the DAR, which is a good policy when applied correctly. You don't want troublemakers out there, but when you're talking about legitimate DAR business and things that are happening that are not a rumor, things that are true, you shouldn't be silenced. That shouldn't be used as a cudgel to silence members, and it was. So the Facebook page was created, and I was just trying to figure out a way to make it relatable to the DAR, so the Daughters Advocating for Restoration's got the same initialism as DAR. So as the years progressed, and we were getting nowhere with our bylaw amendment proposals, because the board they've been gatekeepers. They've been keeping us from amending our bylaws. We realized that we needed the help of a professional parliamentarian, and so we started raising money in late 2025. Okay. And we raised a significant sum in a relatively short amount of time. And as the months went on, I realized I was going to be getting a 1099 for that. And so it wasn't even something that I guess the best way I can say it is that God has opened doors and taken a seed of something that was created out of necessity, and now it's turned into something much bigger. So since Congress and Ms. Hemingway talking about our issue, we have raised a significant sum of money. I feel that is significant. And we're using that money right now to procure as many different opinions as we can from professional parliamentarians and from various attorneys about, which we can talk about this special meeting that we're still due. That's something that we're getting parliamentary advice on as well. But specifically, this DC Human Rights Act of 1977, we need somebody other than Mr. Baggenstoes to weigh in on that. So that's right now what we're using those monies for. And a lot of people are chomping at the bit, I'll just be honest, to sue the DAR. And we are, that's the last thing that we want to do. We don't want to get embroiled in a lawsuit with the DAR. We want to settle this through our governance process because we have the mechanisms to do it. It's just that the National Board of Management and the President General they're not following the rules, just to be frank, they're not. And so we're trying to figure out what recourse do we have to actually compel them to abide by our bylaws, to fulfill their duty, to call a special meeting.
Yeah, because according to your bylaws, the way I understand it, and then I'm going to say this, and then we'll take a break and we'll come back and address it. According to what the bylaws say, the assembly, which is the members, is the superior body in your bylaws, which means that the decision making should be coming from there, not corporate officers. And they're responsible for helping manage it. The coordination and the meetings and those kind of things. But other than that, it's the assembly's decisions, which means a vote by parliamentary procedure, if I understand correctly. So we'll address that when we come back from this break with the founder of Daughters Advocating for Restoration, Laura McDonald.
Take a look at the water you just poured. It looks clean, it tastes fine, but what's really in it? Lead, fluoride, arsenic, chlorine, pesticides, PFAS forever chemicals, pharmaceutical residues, and bacteria. Every single day, these toxins flow straight from your tap into your glass, into your family. It's time for Sentry H2O from Worldview Water. Sentry H2O is the ultimate water treatment technology, designed to remove harmful toxins, balance your water's pH, and enrich it with essential minerals like calcium and magnesium, the way nature intended. From commercial-scale systems to whole-house filtration to crisp, delicious drinking water right at your kitchen sink and shower, Sentry H2O delivers cleaner, healthier water everywhere you need it. No plumber, no tools, no plumbing knowledge required. Perfect for homes, apartments, rentals, RVs, refrigerators, and more. Because everyone deserves access to clean, healthy water. Visit worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net.
So, some of you guys know, I'm a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution. I have 4 to 7 ancestors that I've been able to trace so far. They're going to be 6th or 7th great-grandfathers of mine who served in the Revolutionary War, and specifically on the American side. We don't talk about the Tory ones. So I just want to talk about one today. My ancestor, Stephen Harding, he's my 6th great-grandfather. He served in the Monongalia militia during the Revolutionary War on the Virginia frontier. He and his wife Elizabeth raised 15 children through the Revolution, through the wilderness, through everything. They survived. They built something. They moved through the Cumberland Gap into Kentucky when it was still raw frontier, and they kept going. Just kept going. And the DAR was built to honor women like Elizabeth and her husband Stephen and the sacrifices that they made for us to be where we are today. Women who held the line while their husbands fought. Women who raised the next generation of Americans in conditions that most of us cannot even imagine. I'm one of Elizabeth's daughters, literally, and I am telling you that what happened at the 135th Continental Congress this week is a betrayal, just pure 100% betrayal of every woman whose blood runs through this organization. My ancestors didn't survive the frontier so that her legacy could be handed to someone who was born male. I am a daughter of the American Revolution, and I'm not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere, the Daughters of the American Revolution. And Laura McDonald is my guest today, and she's leading the effort to try to restore the DAR so that men pretending to be women are not allowed to be full members of this organization. And Laura, I chose the two clips of the young ladies intentionally because I think, I suspect that there may be a few people out there that go, the DAR, they're just a bunch of old ladies, on canes and wheelchairs and that kind of thing. It's not really that important. That's not true.
It's not true.
It's not true.
It's not true.
My wife's a descendant of an American Revolutionary War soldier, and she hasn't joined yet because she's working on her genealogy stuff. But she's adamant and was very excited to hear that I was going to do this show today because this has got to be fixed. I mean, we have to stop disrespecting the women of America, and that's as a male, that's what I see. Here is just another action that disrespects the women of America and everything that they've accomplished throughout the centuries and everything that they stand for.
That's right. And I'm smiling so big because that's a fellow Texas daughter, Bree. But she and I don't know each other personally, but we've become acquainted over the last few weeks. And she's just, she's awesome. She's strong. Yeah.
She is. So how is the governance of the Daughters of the American Revolution? Just walk us through real quick. How is it supposed to work? I mentioned the assembly being the superior body. How is it supposed to work? And then contrast that with how you're seeing the leadership trying to make it work.
So in Robert's Rules of Order, it says that the assembly, the membership who make up any organization, they are the superior body. They're the ones who make decisions about what the organization is going to do. And then the executive officers in a board of directors or board of management in this case are there to carry out the will of the assembly. They are forgive me, I think the term is the subordinate body. So you got the superior and the subordinate. That's the spirit of it. They are there to carry out the will of the assembly. So our bylaws are, and I know we've tried to amend our bylaws over the last 3 years to define a woman. And the truth of the matter is we really shouldn't have to do that. Our bylaws are okay the way that they read. The word woman has a clear definition. It's how they're being interpreted. So what's happened is you've got women who are either, I guess what you would call it in the executive or the national level over the course of time have made internal policy decisions to accept amended birth certificates for one group of people, men, but not for another group of people, women who have been adopted. We can talk about the nuance there, but they are amending our bylaws through interpretation. So instead of going through the process of actually proposing an amendment to our bylaws that says, hey, we want to allow for these individuals to be members, they're just as the word Ms. Hemingway used was surreptitiously getting it in there by just recognizing men to be women who have an amended birth certificate. And they act like there is absolutely no way that the DAR could ever question a document that somebody submits, which is laughable, to be honest, because that's what we do as a genealogical society. You can ask women who have applied and been rejected over the smallest thing. And the perfect example is a woman who has been adopted. And if you have a woman that's been adopted by parents who have lineal descent of a patriot, she has a state certified legal birth certificate saying who her parents are. So I'll use myself as an example because I don't have children. If I was to adopt a baby girl, her birth certificate, original, would be sealed away by the court, and the state would issue her a brand new legal document that says I'm her mother. Well, the DAR says that little baby girl You cannot apply to the DAR, even though your mother, Laura, she has lineal descent of a patriot, and your birth certificate says that she's your mother. You cannot use that document to become a member. You have to go petition the court to get your original birth certificate. And if you can't do that, then you got to go find your biological parents or a sibling, and you got to take a DNA test or a blood test to be able to link up your own lineal descent. So it's very rigorous, strict genealogical guidelines, which I have no problem with. If that's the standard, that's fine. But when it comes to these individuals who are men who have their birth certificate amended, all of a sudden, who are we to question that document is what they say. So if that doesn't tell you that this is an ideological stance that they're taking, I don't know what else does.
Yeah,
But
so
go ahead.
Let me ask you this. If these men that are pretending to be women have the changed birth certificate, they still have to prove their genealogical lineage to a patriot, right?
They do. They do. And that's what the people who are, so you got, a few different camps of people. You got people who are activists who think trans women are women. And by the way, our President General and several state national officers are part of a Facebook group called Daughters for Inclusivity that makes the claim trans women are women. And we're not supposed to be political, and yet they're out there making political statements that trans women are women. But so you've got that camp. And then you've got some who are more apathetic and maybe they haven't really thought too hard about it. And what they come back and say is, well, yeah, but they can still prove their descent of a patriot. So that's all that matters. And what we're saying is that's not all that matters. There are two criteria. There are two biological criteria for you to be a daughter, a woman of lineal descent. So why do you throw one out all of a sudden? Why does all of a sudden daughter mean nothing? Why does woman mean nothing all of a sudden?
Yeah, because I could be a member under those rules.
You could. You should apply. What happens?
Yeah. I mean, it as with all of this stuff, it's just you have to make yourself a little bit crazy to be in the camp of the Daughters for Inclusivity, ladies. I mean, that's just, it's nuts to allow men pretending to be women or boys pretending to be girls into my daughter's locker room. It's just nuts. And it's nuts to force me, a male in American society, to by law, to try to force me to use pronouns of a man pretending to be a woman as a she. And that's an actual law in some states. I think they've passed it. Wouldn't surprise me if the D.C. folks hadn't passed it. The pronoun law, So tell folks what happened in the 135th in detail as the way members were treated, Laura. I think this is a very important part of the story.
So our bylaws say that upon the request of 30 chapters in 10 states, the President General shall call a special meeting, which by nature is at a time different than any regular meeting. We've met that requirement 3 times over. Instead of giving us our special meeting as pursuant to our bylaws, they added our vote on a resolution to this year's Congress. So we were faced with a dilemma. We never conceded that fulfilled our request for a special meeting, but we knew that if we didn't show up at Congress that would be voted on, we wouldn't be there to vote. So we had to show up. So at that meeting, there were standing rules put in place that said that we could not, they would not live stream the meeting, which, by the way, it's in our handbook that all business sessions will be live streamed. But all of a sudden this year, no, they're not going to be live streamed. We made a motion to try to amend those standing rules to allow for that. It was not adopted. There was also standing rules that said you could not reference, read, quote, or even rely upon any other legal opinion other than the one the DAR gave us, which was the one from Mr. Bagenstos. So we were severely hampered in our ability to counteract that. So when you have members that get an official looking document from the board saying here, this is what you need to use to make your decision, that the DAR is going to go bankrupt if we do this. We'll lose our tax exempt status. Our properties will be taken from us. Like, everything will go to hell in a handbasket if you vote for this, is essentially what happened there. We were severely hampered from being able to give a counter. We did our best. We did our best. And as you know, 40% of the members there voted in favor of the resolution. So there's one thing. There was probably two really big major issues, though, besides those that I just said, is that after many, many hours of debate, the way it works is when somebody makes a motion, the presiding officer reads that motion. And then right before you're going to go for a vote, they read it again to make sure that members understand what they're voting on. And I want to say that the lady they brought in to preside, she was not a member of the DAR. She was not the national parliamentarian. She was a professional parliamentarian and an attorney. And she did a fantastic job for the most part, with one caveat, which is pretty big. Before we voted, instead of reading the resolution that we had presented and doing it in a way that was meant to be as a positive thing, as upholding our founding principles, it was presented in a way as exclusionary, where you're voting to exclude, quote, trans women. A point of order was made saying that's not the way it should be framed. It was not well taken, and the resolution was not read prior to the vote. The ballot that members got simply said, when the presiding officer tells you, vote yes or no. So a lot of women, after the fact, I've learned, they thought a no vote meant no to allowing men to be members. Yeah. Versus we want to adopt this resolution that says men cannot be members. So there's that. The other thing is we had secured a paper ballot vote. That was huge because members told us if we can vote our conscience, or if we can vote in a paper ballot, we can vote our conscience. And we had been assured that the DAR was prepared to administer a paper ballot vote. So what happened is they went around and they gave out their ballots to all the ladies there, and I cast my vote, put it in the box. And one of the key things is that we had said we wanted to appoint observers to be able to watch the count, and we hadn't done that yet. So I'll try to make this snappy. I went up to the front after I voted to speak to the presiding officer, and was waiting on her to come back when I was told I needed to take a seat in a different section from where I was before. And I did. The security officer, who was awesome, Mr. Larry, if you're listening, we love you. He asked me to come take a seat, and I did. Well, as I'm sitting there, here come more tellers for that section, passing out more ballots, and they offer me another ballot. And I told them I've already voted. And so then I started thinking, well, what are you going to do? What do you do about that? If people actually get up and move, what do you do? And so the next thing I know, they're coming on the stage saying we got to start all over, that they had reports of cheating. And again, I didn't see anybody cheat, but there was that. So then it was an hours long process of starting all the vote completely over. So what happened is you had women cast their vote in the first round and left. They left the premises, and so they didn't know there was a revote. So there's that. And members were also told they could not leave the hall without forfeiting the right to vote. So you had women in there for hours without using the restroom. And what I've been told, and I'm careful to say this is hearsay, I didn't witness this myself, but I believe there were bathrooms available for executive officers to freely use to come and go, not forfeiting their right to vote, but not rank and file members. That's what I've been told. And I've also recently learned that that's not even necessarily a rule, that you can leave and come back during a business session. But if you leave during a vote, you forfeit your right to vote, but that doesn't mean you can't come and go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've got to take one more break. When we come back, I want to continue this discussion and get into what the way ahead ought to be versus what we're seeing here with Laura McDonald of the DAR.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed.
There's a group that's been around for a very long time in America. It's called the Daughters of the American Revolution. It's a genealogical society. Men who think that they're women are now attempting to join the Daughters of the American Revolution. That part's not crazy because, well, it's crazy, but it's not shocking because the pro-trans movement has been trying to invade all sorts of women's spaces, their bathrooms, their sports teams, they're everywhere. But this one's crazy because the Daughters of the American Revolution, at least at the leadership level, is accepting it and encouraging it. I think this is the really exemplary case of the transgender agenda. It's certainly up there. This is a group devoted to history and tradition and preserving the norms of our society. That is, of course, why it is being targeted. If the Daughters of the American Revolution starts to admit men, the Daughters of the American Revolution has been abolished. The definition of the Daughters of the American Revolution is that it is a group in which men are not welcome. It's for daughters, and daughters and sons are different. You can't expand things endlessly. When you expand things beyond their limits, you abolish that thing.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube, and my guest today is helping us step through that issue. The Daughters of the American Revolution are admitting trans people. I don't call them trans women, folks. I call them men pretending to be women because that's what they are as full members of the Daughters of the American Revolution. And my guest today is Laura McDonald. She founded a group called Daughters Advocating for Restoration, and it exists for one purpose: to restore the DAR to what it's supposed to be, which is what Michael Knowles there is talking about. And Laura McDonald is my guest today. And Laura, you mentioned the special meeting in October. What is that all about?
So Robert's rules and our bylaws say that upon the request of 30 chapters in 10 states, the President General shall call a special meeting. So special meetings are for the sole purpose of discussing one or two items of business. So it's something that happened it's when there's something of such significance that you have to have a special meeting to meet to deal with it. So the point is that it's not commingled with anything that's happening at the regular meeting so that people aren't, like what happened at Congress, distracted by Congress activities. So we have requested a special meeting for October the 11th, 2026 on the birthday of our founding, which, by the way, October 11th, Columbus Day, was chosen specifically as the date of our founding of the DAR because it was Columbus Day. And now the DAR barely even recognizes Columbus Day, for whatever that's worth. And just so you know, too, restoration, for now, it is about restoring to women's only organization, but we are seeking to restore our founding principles, not just of being a women's only organization, but honoring our founders and our history, our American history. That's why this is so important, because over the years, we have seen institutions start to lean left, start to get away from promoting American exceptionalism. And the DAR should not be one of those institutions. Just want to say that for whatever that's worth. So we requested a meeting for that day for this purpose. And instead of doing that, they added it to Congress. They have absolutely no authority to do that. They gave themselves extra authority that the bylaws or Robert's rules does not give them. So we are still looking for that special meeting. So that's we don't know if the President General is going to fulfill her duty. We've asked her, we've sent her many emails that she is ignoring. She is not responding to emails that we send her, registered letters, asking her when is she going to call that meeting. 114 chapters and 34 states have asked for that.
Wow, 34 states.
Yes, sir.
That's pretty close to what you need for a constitutional amendment to the Constitution of the United States. That's pretty close. So they're ignoring you on the meeting. And there's other avenues that are going on because this is a congressionally commissioned organization. I have a couple of questions about that. One is what Michael Knowles talked about. Does the DAR, as it's commissioned by Congress, still exist? Because they have abdicated a 50% of the membership requirement. That'll become being an actual woman.
I would argue no. The DAR is no longer a women's only organization, and that's part of this whole gaslighting thing. Is that to this day, I think even some of the leaders will tell us there's no men in the DAR, while saying yes, we accept trans women. So I would argue that the DAR is no longer a women's only organization. That's what we're fighting to restore. And here's what we'll say about the congressional charter. And this is why this is so ironic, is that you've got women in leadership telling us that we don't have a First Amendment right to define our membership eligibility. We don't have that. It would be against the law to say no to these individuals. That's what they've told us. It would be against the DC Human Rights Act. That's what they've told us. So then when they're hearing that Congress wants to amend the charter, which they have every right to do, charter is not a right, it is a privilege.
That's right. Congress
has the authority to amend, give, or revoke a charter.
That's right.
So now that Congress is paying attention and saying, hey, DAR, we gave you this charter based on the premise that you are a women's genealogical society. It looks like you're not really adhering to your bylaws. Maybe we need to revisit this charter, and which, by the way, DAR, you have the right to do whatever you want to do. You're a private association. You can let in whoever you want to or not. You need to amend your bylaws to allow for it. But, oh, and by the way, when you do that, now you're changing the whole premise of your society from which we granted you this congressional charter. So now you've got these women at the top who are, hollering, oh, it's illegal and we got to listen to the government, to how dare the government tell us what we can and can't do.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a piece of legislation, Congressman Ben Cline from Virginia, H.R. 9701. What's that about?
Well, Representative Cline, like you said, from Virginia, we found out, I want to say a week or two ago, and I wish that we could claim credit as Daughters Advocating for Restoration. The first time I spoke to Congressman Cline's office was last week to thank him for the bill. Now, we think we had an indirect impact on that, but we first learned about it from just through the grapevine, to be honest, a couple of weeks ago. And we were thrilled when we heard it, because since we are in such a governance crisis right now, we're not sure how to get out of it. We're in a quagmire. But if Congress would step in and say, DAR, if you want to keep your charter, you have to adhere to your bylaws as they're written, that would probably solve the problem for the foreseeable future.
Because the bylaws say that you have to be a woman.
Correct.
With confirmed lineal heritage, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is that what the bill does?
It does. I can't quote it verbatim, but essentially says that in order to be eligible for membership in the DAR, you have to be a woman that has either the ability or would have had the ability, except for medical issues, to be able to have children, essentially something along those lines. It's not so restrictive, to where it would, exclude women that have, maybe can't have children, or, maybe have don't have two X chromosomes. But if you have a Y, you're a guy. That's essentially what I think it's trying to home in on.
That's the way God created it. So if you have a Y, you're a guy.
That's right.
And is that going to be voted on? Do you know? What are they saying about it?
I think we're up to over 20 co-sponsors. on that bill right now. I don't know. But we do need members of the DAR and non-members to write your congressman, to ask them to co-sponsor the bill. Let them know that you support this. And it's important that institutions like the DAR maintain their integrity, that words have meanings. Otherwise, what are we doing here? We're daughters in name only? If that and what does that mean? In the long term, it's a deterioration of our cultural norms, and of course, most importantly, it is it's getting away from God's order and natural law.
Absolutely right. It is across every American institution. And I, for one, have been calling for women, American women, to organize and act to stop this desecration of women's spaces, this disrespect of women's rights, because it's not just an opinion, Laura. This is becoming law more and more and more, like this D.C. law that this lawyer is trying to quote, saying that you have to be, you have to follow it. And by the way, 501c is a federal charity, nonprofit designation, not state or local. So I'd be interested to see them try to take a nonprofit status from a federal, a congressionally chartered organization. There's no local law involved in that, from what I understand. And I'm not a lawyer either, but I'm smart enough to read and have a little bit of common sense, and that's what we need. I got about 30 seconds left. Tell folks where they can donate to you guys and how you can help, because the DAR has 3,000 plus chapters in this country, and every one of them ought to be raising the roof to their congressman.
That's right. That's right. Well, we have a website, daughtersadvocatingrestoration.org. If you Google us, you'll find us. We have a Facebook group that's growing by the hundreds every day. We have a Give, Send, Go account that you can find through our Facebook page and our website. And again, monies raised right now are going to educate members about their rights under parliamentary procedure, and trying to gather as many legal opinions as we can so that members understand our rights as a private member association.
Absolutely. Well, Laura McDonald, folks, founder of the Daughters Advocating for Restoration and a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution herself. Go support them and support this effort. We've got to clean our institutions out. This is Marxism, and it's a disrespect of the law that women have fought so hard to get put in place in this country, and it's disrespecting their actual freedom, everything they've ever fought for and sacrificed for, and everything we've ever sacrificed for is in this effort. Go fight for it. I'm Rob Maness. I will see you tomorrow on Whistleblower Wednesday. We'll have Brian Trasher of the United Cajun Navy, who helped in the search and recovery of Nolan Wells, the young man that died off of Horn Island here on July 4th on the Gulf of America coast in Mississippi. I'll see you then.
Tonight on the Worldview Report, American forces strike Iran for the 9th consecutive night. Explosions are reported across 5 Iranian cities. Kuwait, they intercept multiple hostile drones. And Iran's interim deal negotiator announces that Tehran is suspending its commitments to the June 17th agreement that is now effectively dead. The Pentagon announces a 17th American service member killed since the war began, and confirms that Iran struck a nuclear power plant construction site, and reports that Iranian missiles aimed at Jordan came close enough to the Israeli border that Israel warned its citizens to prepare for air and raid sirens for the first time in weeks. Yemen's Houthi rebels announce an immediate maritime embargo against Saudi Arabia effective today, threatening to close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and disrupt the Red Sea oil route that Saudi Arabia has been using as its Hormuz alternative. American firms and the Iraqi government, they signed a $60 billion deal to build new pipelines running from southern Iraq across Syria to the Mediterranean that would, according to Goldman Sachs, carry 60% of the oil currently shipped through Hormuz. That's to happen by 2028. DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, he announces the department has identified more than 250,000 non-citizens illegally on voter rolls in California, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. And he warns those states, they will lose federal election funding if they refuse to purge the rolls. And in tonight's commentary, I look at the map of every major trade route being built right now, from IMEC to Belt and Road to Iraq's Development Road to the North-South Corridor. And I ask why 5 rival projects designed by governments that cannot stand each other are all independently converging on the same compact region. Then I'll open Daniel 7 and explain what kind of man it takes to make a group of competing rivals snap into place. And it fits with Revelation chapter 18. All that and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brandon House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brandon House.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. We begin tonight with the latest from the Iran war, reported by the Jerusalem Post, and it's drawing on CENTCOM. American forces, they launched a new wave of strikes against Iran early Monday morning, marking the 9th consecutive night of U.S. military action. CENTCOM announced the strikes in a post to X, and they wrote that they will continue to degrade Iranian military capabilities. Those capabilities are being used to attack commercial vessels and civilian mariners transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has been retaliating by targeting U.S. bases and other infrastructure in neighboring countries. Kuwait's military announced that they were intercepting multiple hostile drones on Sunday night as missile alert sirens sounded across the country. The U.S. Embassy in Bahrain, they issued a warning to Americans in the capital, Manama. They told them to remain vigilant after they received information that suggested Iran may be seeking to target unspecified locations in central Manama. Iran's supreme leader, Khomeini, he warned on Saturday that the U.S. would face unforgettable lessons if strikes continue. An Iranian negotiator, he said that Tehran was suspending its commitments to the interim deal and accused the U.S. of violating it. The halfway point has now passed. In the 60 days, the June 17th deal set out to negotiate the permanent end of the war and Iran's nuclear program. That deal tonight is effectively dead. Our next story comes from military.com. The Pentagon announced on Sunday that a U.S. service member was killed in Iraq on Saturday during the controlled detonation of a downed Iranian drone. A second service member who was killed when Iran struck a U.S. base in Jordan on Friday had gone missing after the attack. Unidentified remains found on Sunday were being examined to identify him. Since the war began on February 28th, 17 American service members have now been killed. Iran's Atomic Energy Agency, they disclosed that U.S. strikes targeted the construction site of a nuclear power plant in southwestern Iran, the first confirmed strike on a nuclear infrastructure site in that location. The IAEA, they confirmed the site was in the very early stages of construction and contained no nuclear material when the watchdog last visited the site. Kuwait said its power and desalination plant was attacked for the second time in 2 days, causing fires. Though its Ministry of Electricity said the power grid remains stable. In Kuwait, approximately 90% of the drinking water comes from desalination. Jordan's military, they said it shot down several Iranian missiles, one volley of which was aimed at the port city of Aqaba, directly across the border from Israel's Eilat, thus prompting Israel to warn its citizens to expect air raid sirens for the first time in weeks. The GGC Secretary General accused Iran of war crimes for strikes on civilian infrastructure. The Strait of Hormuz, it saw only 3 transits on Friday and 8 on Saturday. For the war, the daily average was nearly 140. Our next story comes from Zero Hedge, and it represents the most alarming escalation of the energy war since the Strait of Hormuz was first closed. Yemen's Houthi rebels, they announced on Monday that they are imposing an immediate maritime embargo against Saudi Arabia. That's effective upon the issuance of their statement. A Houthi military spokesman declared that it was based on what he called the principle of an eye for an eye, saying the Houthis would respond to the blockade with a blockade. Now, here's why this is catastrophic if followed through. With the Strait of Hormuz already largely closed by Iranian attacks and the U.S. naval blockade, well, Saudi Arabia, they have been rerouting millions of barrels of oil per day through its internal pipeline system to its Red Sea export terminal, which ships through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. That route, it was carrying approximately 4.5 million barrels per day as a Hormuz alternative, representing roughly 7% of global energy supplies. If the Houthis attack or blockade Saudi shipping in the Red Sea, well, both of the Middle East ports, their main oil export routes, they will be disrupted at the same time. That's a scenario that energy analysts have described as having no modern precedent. A source close to the Houthis told Reuters that forces have already deployed missiles and drones near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in Yemen's highlands, and they are awaiting only the order to begin attacks. Iran had specifically instructed the Houthis to stand ready to close Bab el-Mandeb Strait if the U.S. struck Iranian power infrastructure. That's according to Reuters reporting. And we covered this last week. Brent crude, it jumped nearly 4% on Monday before easing after Tehran signaled it remained open to talks. We'll be right back after this short break. Friends, this is Brandon House. For more than a year now, I've been teaching through the book of Revelation, and the response from you has been overwhelming. You've asked me again and again, when are you going to put this study in print? We want to mark it up. We want to share it with our families. Well, it's here. My brand new 2-volume commentary on the book of Revelation, verse by verse, chapter by chapter. This is not a watered down, allegorized replacement theology approach to Revelation. This is a literal, grammatical, historical study, the way the Lord intended his word to be read. And I connect the prophecy of Revelation to the headlines you're watching unfold right now, the rise of global government and the convergence of end-time events the Lord Jesus warned us about. Folks, we are living in serious days, and there has never been a more important time to understand what God has told us about what is coming. Get your 2-volume Revelation commentary today at worldviewstore.com. That's worldviewstore.com.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
Welcome back from the break. Thanks for being with us tonight and every night. And thank you so much for those of you that support our broadcast network and ministry to help us continue to push out free news and information through the lens of a Christian worldview. There are many ways you can support us, but one of the most powerful ways is by going to worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. Also there, you'll find out about legacy giving, how to remember the foundation in your estate planning. There are many families that have done that. Thank you to those who have. And would you please prayerfully consider such? All the details are there on legacy giving at worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. Some of you out there are very blessed, and right now would be a great time, if you're so led, to support us generously, because it's summer and giving drops in the summer. All it takes is, 2-3 people. They give a generous contribution, and it puts us right back on track. So please consider being one of those 2 or 3 people. Would you? Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you. Don't forget about our fall conference coming up Friday night, October 23rd, Saturday, October 24th. We're making it free, brought to you in part by our foundation. We've never made our national conference absolutely 100% free, but it is this year. After 22 years of holding a national conference every year, we're making this one free, and we're moving it to the Milwaukee area, Waukesha, to be specific. The Waukesha Expo Center, renting that building for 2 days will cost over $10,000 alone. We'll take some offerings, and we're using our foundation also so we can minister to people in person directly. All right. So please, again, get registered. If you are not registered, you need to do that. The tickets are free, but you must be registered. You can do that at worldviewtube.com/events. Worldviewtube.com/events. All right. Thank you for doing that. And please remember that my Revelation commentary, that is 3 volumes, 2,100 pages. That'll be out this fall. Would you please consider a pre-order so we know how many books to have printed? You can do that and find out all the details about that 2,100-page, 3-volume set on the book of Revelation at worldviewstore.com. I have to tell you, it's like I don't think any other commentary out there. I think it was J.B. Hickson that said that a couple weeks ago. As I've been saying, think Bible commentary for lay people meets Tom Clancy, because it is a page turner. Because I'm constantly giving you news and information. After we study the biblical text, I then bring you news and information and stories from around the world that show that this is all being set up, like I'm going to do in my commentary tonight, based on all the trade routes that are being built in the Middle East, from the IMEC to the Al-Fa port in Iraq, and now a multi-billion-dollar deal just signed by Iraq. It's all lining up, and this is in my book, my Revelation commentary for lay people. It is a page turner, so please consider getting a copy. It is written at a level every layperson can understand. I wanted even high school students to be able to read it and keep up, and they will. Worldviewstore.com. It's a great evangelistic tool as well for those who might be interested in end times and Bible prophecy. There are many non-believers that are very interested in this topic, so consider it as a Christmas gift as well. It's a great evangelistic tool, and it's beautiful. Hardcover, brown, gold print on the cover and spine. Is beautiful. Make a great gift. Worldviewstore.com. Thank you for that, guys. Our next story comes from the Marine Insight, and it's drawing on reports from the Associated Press, Reuters, and official Iraqi government statements. American firms, they have signed agreements worth $60 billion with the government of Iraq. I was just telling you about that. They're going to develop alternative routes for shipping oil from the Gulf region that bypasses the Strait of Hormuz entirely. The deal, it spans the defense, healthcare, infrastructure, and the communications sectors, with the core strategic component being a new pipeline network that will enable Iraq oil to reach world markets without transiting the waters that Iran has used as a choke point throughout the war. Chevron, one of America's largest energy companies, they signed 3 separate deals with the Iraqi government. 2 are designed to boost oil production. The 3rd creates a pipeline network that provides a direct Hormuz alternative. The Iraq-Syria pipeline deal, it was announced on Friday by the U.S. Department of State. It is the physical backbone of this strategy. The line will run from southern Iraq to Hadiyah, then across Syria to Turkey, and then the Syrian port on the Mediterranean coast, carrying approximately 2 million barrels per day. U.S. Ambassador to Turkey, Thomas Barak, he framed the ambition plainly, saying the new pipelines will make the Strait of Hormuz an afterthought. Goldman Sachs, their analysts, they estimate that the 7 pipelines currently under development could, by the end of 2028, carry about, 60% of the oil that's currently shipped through Hormuz, or about 14 million barrels per day out of the approximately 23 million that went through the strait before the war began. These pipelines, they run through the ancient soil of Iraq and Syria. We've been covering the geopolitical significance of those routes on this program extensively and will continue to do so. Our next story comes from Zero Hedge, and it's confirmed by Epoch Times and DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen. It was announced on Friday that the Department of Homeland Security has identified more than 250,000 non-citizens who were illegally registered on voter rolls in 4 states: California, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. He warned that states refusing to purge their ineligible voters, they could face the loss of federal election funding. His exact language was, very clear. If these states want a grant and they want to be reimbursed to run federal elections, they're going to have to implement security measures. He said DHS security enhancements will be mandatory, not optional. He also confirmed what President Trump disclosed in his Thursday address, that Iran hacked state voter files, and they attempted to compromise the systems where military members are voting. That revelation means that the nation we are currently at war with has been actively targeting our elections. He said DHS will notify every state about non-citizens that are on their voter rolls and will direct them to remove all ineligible voters immediately. The 4 states named by DHS are all states that have resisted Republican-backed voter roll purges. And of course, they've resisted proof of citizenship requirements for years. And here they are: California, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. Collectively, by the way, they account for 87 electoral college votes. If 250,000 of those confirmed non-citizens cast ballots, the question of whether those votes affected past outcomes is not hypothetical. It is a mathematical exercise with real consequences. President Trump's underlying legislation, which is the Save America Act, it requires proof of citizenship to vote. And yet, it remains stalled in the Senate over the filibuster. Well, now it is time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. Take a look at a map of the world's newest trade corridors, and something, jumps out. They're not spreading out. They're converging. Start with China's Belt and Road because, it came up first, and everything else on the map is basically an answer to it. For more than a decade, Beijing has been buying and building ports, rail lines, and pipelines from the Pacific to the Mediterranean. Piraeus in Greece and Gwadar in Pakistan. They have terminals across the Gulf. And their stated goal was commerce. The practical effect, of course, was that China, they gained a hand on the physical infrastructure of Eurasian trade. Then Washington, D.C. took notice. Brussels noticed. So did New Delhi, Riyadh, Turkey, Russia. And what followed was not one alternative, it was 4. First, you had IMEC, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. We've talked about it a lot here. It runs in 2 legs. An eastern leg, that carries goods by sea from India to Gulf ports. Then there's a northern leg, and it picks them up at Gulf railheads and moves them right over land through Saudi Arabia. And then you have Jordan and Israel going to the Mediterranean at Haifa, and then on to Greece and Europe. It exists because of a coalition of governments that wanted a route to Europe that Beijing did not own. Second, the International North-South Transit Corridor. It links India's west coast to Iranian ports, then north by rail through Iran and the Caspian into Russia. It bypasses the Suez entirely. And it hands India and Russia a lane that neither China nor the West controls. Third, Iraq's development road. Now, this one I've been talking about the longest because I am a Babylon watcher. Iraq's development road. It's a new deep water port known as Al Fal. It's on the Gulf and is connected by rail and highway to Turkey. And planners say it can cut Shanghai to Rotterdam transit times nearly in half. Baghdad, Iraq, Turkey, they want a quarter of their own, and they want the transit fees that come with it. And then fourth, the middle corridor. That's Central Asia to the Caspian. It goes across the South Caucasus through Turkey into Europe. And it exists because, well, Central Asian governments wanted a way west that did not run through Russia. And the Suez is still there. Of course, we have the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb. And the canal, well, they remain a core artery, no matter what else gets built. Now, here's what I want you to see. Every one of these projects is justified in ordinary secular terms. They're shorter shipping times, fewer choke points, less dependence on Moscow, less dependence on Beijing, less dependence on the canal. Each argument, well, it's reasonable on its own. And more than that, these are not partners. They're rivals. IMAC was designed to compete with the Belt and Road Initiative. The North-South Corridor, it competes with IMAC. Iraq's Development Road competes with both. The Middle Corridor, well, it was built to route around Russia. And Russia, well, they know it. Nobody coordinated this, folks. There was no summit where the great powers agreed to concentrate the world's commerce in one place. And yet, look at where the track goes down. They do not produce one line. They produce really a lattice, multiple east-west corridors, all threading through a compact region that runs from the Gulf and Iran across Iraq and Saudi Arabia, up through the Levant and Turkey, and out into the Mediterranean. Competitors working against each other, independently, converging on the same ground. The redundancy, folks, is the story. A container leaving Mumbai can sail to the UAE or Oman, ride IMEX rail, that spine, through Riyadh, and then turn west to Haifa, or northwest through Jordan and Turkey, or tie into Iraq's development road. Chinese and Central Asia cargo, it can run through, well, the Caspian and Turkey, or intersect Iranian and Iraqi routes. Notice what never happens in any of those scenarios. The freight never leaves the region. Disrupt one strait, and the flow does not go around the Middle East. It reroutes through the Middle East. And this is not only about, well, containers. The policy studies on IMAC, they named 3 pillars, not one. Transportation, energy, digital infrastructure, rail, and ports. Yeah, that's all there. But also cross-border electricity, hydrogen pipelines, and new subsea and terrestrial fiber optic cables tying Middle Eastern data centers, folks, to India on one side and Europe on the other side. Planners are explicit. They're explicit about what they want built on top of the physical routes. Neom in Saudi Arabia. You have Saudi ports, Israeli and Greek terminals, Iraqi logistic zones, critical minerals that are being refined. Then you have advanced manufacturing. You have artificial intelligence data centers, financial services, goods, energy, data, money, concentrated in one region on infrastructure designed to survive the loss of any single route. Now, folks, open up Revelation chapter 18, because Scripture describes an end-time commercial center that reigns over the kings of the earth. Merchants They grow rich by her. Shipmasters and sailors, they stand at a distance and mourn when she falls, because in a single hour, the wealth is gone as God judges Babylon. I'm not telling you the blueprint is finished, and I'm not putting a date on anything, but what I will tell you is this. For a commercial center to reign over the kings of the earth, the world's trade has to run through it first, right? That kind of concentration does not appear overnight. It gets built with treaties, with rail, with fiber, and with capital. Now, let's add in Daniel chapter 7. Daniel the prophet sees a fourth beast with 10 horns. He's the little horn that rises among them. And he plucks up 3 of the 10 and tears them out by the roots. He replaces those leaders. Now, this is just a theory, okay? I want you to hear me. It's a theory. The very thing that makes this, I think, lattice remarkable is also what makes it fragile. It's built by rivals. Iran against Saudi Arabia, Turkey against its neighbors, India against China, Iraq caught in the middle of it all. Every corridor on the map stalls at some point, not because the engineering fails, but because 3 or 4 governments can't agree on a tariff, a border crossing, a gauge of rail, or a war. So ask the question, what does it take to finish these projects and get them to all work together? It's not more engineering. The engineering is solved. I think what it takes is a man who can remove the holdouts, uproot 3 of them, install 3 new replacements. And suddenly, the treaties, well, they pretty much sign themselves. The rails connect, the pipelines open, the cables land, and what 100 summits could not negotiate, one figure accomplishes by force and by maybe charm. And the world, they call him the man who finally made it all work. That's what Daniel describes. It's the Antichrist, a one-world global leader. A reordering of the leadership from the inside, after which, well, the system snaps into place. I'm speculating on the mechanism, but I am not speculating about the pattern. Scripture says that a man rises, he subdues, he consolidates, and he's admired for it. And I think what this map tells us is that the infrastructure that he would need to rule commercially is being poured right now by people with no interest whatsoever in Bible prophecy. And it's being done by rivals who cannot stand each other. So, folks, I think we're at a stage setting for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled. Folks, this is what's in my Revelation commentary. It's a 3-volume set, 2,100 pages written for lay people. If you find this fascinating and the analysis we're doing where we read the Bible and then we go to the news, you're going to appreciate my Revelation commentary. 2,100 pages, 3 volumes. More details and to do a pre-order, worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Till next time, I'm Brandon House. May God save America. Take care. Joining me now is Michael Weiner as we continue to talk about the dollar and where the dollar is going. I got a new chart for you guys. You guys know how much I love charts and graphs and graphics because it helps to, well, you know the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, I made a new one for you, my friends. U.S. dollar purchasing power declined by 1913 to 2026. Michael was in high school about then, 1913. He ought to know exactly how much he could not buy when he took his girlfriend out on a date. Let's talk about these 2 charts. Welcome back, Mr. Weiner.
Thank you very much. I'm just returning from an alumni meeting from the 1854 convention. So
There you go. There you go. All right, let's go to this chart I made. This chart is based on and it's very important for you to understand this. This chart is based on the purchasing power of $100 in 1982 to 1984, okay? In 1913, you could buy about $1,000 of goods and services with the dollar. But by 1982-84, you could only get about $100 in goods and services. And we're using that 1982-84 as the peg for $100. Today, here we are. Now, you can get about $30 in goods and services. 1913, the equivalent of $1,000 in goods or services. Today, about $30. What do you make of that? The dollar's lost 97, all that to say, the dollar's lost over 97% of its purchasing power since 1913. Thoughts, Mr. Weiner?
You know, it used to be a story that some brokers would normally say that Dolly's allowed to spend a little time with
Yes,
it.
she's very intrigued by the chart. She's looking at the chart, studying it.
He's very concerned
She does
about
it more.
Dolly.
She does it more in milk bones than she does dollars, but that's all right.
You know, the story about being able to go buy a suit, I'm getting, a suit of clothes years ago with a $20 gold piece, which was $20 US currency. You could buy a suit of clothes and a pair of shoes and go have lunch and maybe have a little bit of change. You can't even get a pair of socks right now for $20. I personally lived it back in 1970.
13.
Oh, not 13. But back when I graduated and became a stockbroker back in the late 70s, before gold legalized, I had to start with a dark suit. You can only wear a three-piece dark suit with the hornblower and Weeks, where I worked. And I went over to Robert Hall Clothes, which used to be the big men's clothing deal back in the day, Robert Hall. And I bought a suit and a vested suit and 4 pair of pants for $89.95. I couldn't even get a pair of pants for $80 nowadays. So things have changed dramatically. But what has also changed is gold was $42.50 at that time, and now it's 4,000. So it's gone up 100 times in value. My concern is that there will be no dollar in the future. The dollar is nothing more than monopoly money. We went off the gold standard in 71. And in 71, gold was backed dollar was backed by gold and silver. Now it's monopoly money. And they're going to be changing that. And we talked about it. And people don't get it in the full scheme of things. And that is, it's not going to be a new currency anymore. It's going to be a totally, completely new financial system, which will be run digitally and will be controlling us to a point where our privacy will be non-existent. That's what we constantly keep preaching about and we keep warning people about. It's sort of a financial socialism where they have total control completely of how we move, how we spend, and legitimately eventually can have a say-so in what they don't want us to buy. And we are moving in that direction. It's not going to be getting better. That's why when we see these young people right now running around trying to support socialism, and socialism has never worked. You don't own anything, but they're too silly or too dumb or too undereducated or just basically not being monitored by their family. And that's really what I'm looking at right now. And I thought about it deep and hard this weekend. What did I do different than others? I didn't run a democracy, and most assuredly, I made sure that my children understood what freedom and what socialism, what capitalism, what a true American values are of a constitutional republic. And I say to all of us who are over 60 years of age, and myself over 600 years of age, that it's time to stand up and speak up to your children and have them speak up to their children about waking the heck up. For God's sakes, running around in this country right now and allowing socialists to run around and winning elections, and to you people in Michigan, you people in Wisconsin who have a socialist running for your governorship, If you don't wake up and start speaking up to your family, to your children, to your grandchildren, and say, please wake up and stop this, we're going to lose our country. So it's not just a matter of money right now. It's also a matter of a financial system, and it's also a matter of what these people ultimately want, Brandon, which is not just 2 more states, and it's not just a situation of changing the Senate, and it's not just a situation of adding it to the Supreme Court. They want a constitutional convention rewriting it. They don't like it. These people don't like our country. If you don't like it, get the heck out, literally. But this is not a place that was fought for by our parents and our grandparents, and it literally, you got to look at the fact that it ties into your financial situation, because if you don't own anything, the one thing that we preach about here to own is privacy, security. When you sit here, and I was just talking to a gentleman moments ago who was telling me, oh, I called up my brokerage firm and they were telling me what ticker symbol is on the gold I buy. I said, I don't know what company you're dealing with, but clearly they're trying to control you. And more importantly, that's the stupidest statement I've ever heard. The cash market in gold is not a ticker symbol. It's just them trying to sit back and control you. So I guess my question, and I'm going into an elaborate statement regarding the dollar, is the dollar was dead in 1971. We just didn't bury it. It's worthless. It's monopoly money. The reason you can't replace it with gold is there's so much of it that's been printed, it's been out of control. So to think that the dollar is going to gain spending power is ridiculous. Not only are you not going to gain spending power, but you're not going to gain any privacy. They're going to gain total control over you, and you better do something before you can't. Period. I'm done.
Now, what about Japan? What about the reports that Japan is going to be dumping a lot of U.S. bonds? Are you hearing that?
Yeah, nobody wants our debt. We used to be, coming up to September 30th is the year end of the United States of America. Year ends, our new year starts October 1st. We have to turn over this debt. And I've said it in other times, and nobody wants it. Who in their right mind wants to finance a 600 score? Because that's the easiest way I can explain it to you. When they bought this debt, it was an 800 score. It's now a 600 score. They don't want it. I don't blame them. That's why Trump said the only way 3 or 4 weeks ago on a Monday to deal with our debt is through crypto. That's devaluation, revaluation, new financial system, replace it with something even more worthless. And, look, I'm a Trump supporter. I just don't like some of his policies right now. That's all, and I have a right to do that. I don't like the alternative at all, but realistically, I think there's a conflict there on this whole thing with cryptos. But that's what their solution is. So Japan is not being foolish, although they're looking to go digital too, quite frankly. But they don't want our paper. Nobody does. China doesn't. European Union doesn't. The IMF doesn't want to support it anymore. We have to buy our own debt, and financing that debt, the interest that we pay on our debt is larger than our gross national product for the entire year. So the only way out of this is to control our spending, stop the fraud, which would legitimately get rid of it. And, and we as Americans could say, well, I don't want to buy our debt. I don't want to be involved with this. It's too bad. We don't have a choice. We can't stop this stupidity. What we can do is protect what we have by going into physical metal and having something that is not in their reach. Otherwise, we have no control.
Well, I am again reading about more and more stories here as I scroll related to Japan dumping more U.S. bonds.
Oh, yeah.
And they have officially introduced its version of the Clarity Act. The bill recognizes cryptos as a financial asset and allows banks to hold it. It would also cut crypto taxes from 55% to 20%.
Correct. And that all they're doing is building their entire financial system. And that's just out of the Clarity Act. You got to remember, we also have stable coins. We got Jamie Dimon, who up until last week was furious about Coinbase. And I said 2 weeks after he got furious, a week after he got furious, that he would eventually cave because they'd all get together and drink the Kool-Aid. And now they're getting together. They're forming this Coinbase thing. They're forming this staple thing. They're forming this digital banking thing. And they will buy our debt. But we're the ones that are going to finance the purchasing of all this debt and all this fraud and all this garbage we're going to get stuck to again. And, it's like I said, it'll be for the good of the nation. That's how they'll put it to us. But for the good of the nation, my question is, stop lending money to the foreign nations that we don't have. Stop borrowing money to lend money to entities that we do not have the capability to borrow to anymore, to give to anymore, and start cleaning up the situation as it might be with the debt. But this is not going to be solved in the next 3 months. So get ready. That's what I'm trying to say. When we warn people, Brandon, and we try to do like I'm thinking to myself yesterday when I was watching a thing on the freeze-dried food, and I was saying to myself, people looking at this and trying to wake up, we're trying to do this right now. If you think on October 1st, gold's going to be at $4,000 an ounce, good luck with that. These people who have been smart to be buying right now, the best time to be buying, ladies and gentlemen, is when everybody else is selling. Seriously. So you have an opportunity because of the Iranian crisis to do something about it. But the one thing they're going to be looking at low-hanging fruit, there's people that say Social Security will go broke. Social Security will not go broke before an election, especially coming into the midterms and the presidential. What's going to go broke, what's going to change is your money, your financial situation as far as your retirement plans. And Reagan, as I said and we said before, is a financial Nostradamus on this. Japan is doing nothing more than being financially prudent and getting away from a high-risk investment.
Here's Peter Schiff. Listen to this.
And the world is now pulling the rug out from under the U.S. The dollar is going to collapse. The dollar is going to be replaced by gold. Central banks are buying gold to back up their currencies. They're getting rid of dollars. They're getting rid of treasuries. We are headed for an economic crisis, again, that will make the 2008 financial crisis look like a Sunday school picnic. The biggest difference between the crisis that we're about to have and the one we had back then is this one is all in America. It's not going to be exported to the rest of the world. It's not a global financial crisis. It's an American financial crisis. And
there you go. And, of course, China, all of them are just buying up massive amounts of gold.
I've always said that the central banks, the reason why you only see a drop in the market is they're paying for their oil right now with their gold out of the central bank. China,
no idea what
China has already stated huge ordering of starting placing orders for future contracts for gold. India, all these countries, Japan, all of these countries, Vietnam, you can go into Taiwan, South Korea, in the European Union, the IMF, they're all trying to amass the gold that they had lost. And the United States, you had Trump mention it. They cannot go dollar for dollar. There is not enough gold on the planet to cover the overabundance of currency that they've done. But China's new currency and their SWIFT system is coming out in the next 60 days. And when they do, it's going to be partially backed by gold. So yes, it's going to be great for the gold market. And yes, I agree with Peter. Peter is talking I'm talking 8,000 by the end of the election in 2028. He's looking at 10 grand. I'm still saying 6,000 the end of the year. I am not budging, but I am not.
Why are you not budging from that 6,000 figure with it being down today to about $4,009?
You ever see a guy doing juggling and they're throwing stuff up in the air and they're juggling, they're doing a great job, and they're like that. Ed Sullivan used to have on his show this guy who had 7,000 plates floating around in this.
Logan, you know who Ed Sullivan was?
I do not.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't.
I knew that was coming. I do not.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
The bulk of our audience does, of course, but there you go.
The bulk of the audience. For the bulk of the audience's sake, let me just mention that you cannot juggle all of this and not sooner or later have a problem.
True.
The ball's start coming down. And that's what Peter's talking about. We have an economy that's based by smoke and mirrors. I mean, President Trump is doing the best he can with a mess he was left by Donald Duck, the former president, who couldn't find his way to his own bathroom. He'd probably be in the ladies' room half the time. But this guy was just absolutely quite of responsibility, and let the doors open for all these socialists running around. And, the reality is that all these plates are going to start falling. All of these things are going to start coming down. And the problem is most people aren't paying attention, and you don't want to. As we said about the Jews in Germany, the problems that existed, I can say to all of you people out there right now that we try to help. Why in 2000, let me bring it close to you. I'm not going to go back in the 1990s and 1980s and 1979 and before. I'm just going to, and also understanding the formation of why we had a depression, which was caused by the Federal Reserve back in the 1910s and 20s, and how they handled our currency. They should be abolished, but that'll never happen in our lifetime, at least ours. I'm telling you right now, if you do not pay attention, 2008, nobody warned us. Why didn't again, you have these geniuses, they're on TV right now. You had Art Laffer on with Peter Schiff in 2007, telling Peter he was silly and that we had the greatest economy in the world coming about. Did he come out and apologize in November of 2008? Did anybody say anything positive? No. All of that drama and all of that calamity and all of that problems came down upon us, and you had no forewarning, except guess what? From Worldview Weekend.
That's right.
That's right. Back, tries to warn you. And Brandon and I, a year ago in July, after the great big beautiful bill passed, literally a week after it, if we can grab the show, I said, they're going to push their digital agenda. They're going to move all this stuff. We're going to have major problems moving forward. And here we are, literally at that precipice of a major financial move. A year end of this country is October 1st. What are you going to do about it? You're going to sit back and tell me that I'm crazy? I don't make money under management under this. I don't sit back and have a benefit off you buying gold other than we sell it to you one time. And then we work with you and help you. But reality is Reagan saw this. That's why he did what he did with the financial system with retirement plans, trying to offer you protection, which is still available if you're smart enough to do something about it. If you're over 59 and a half and you have a 401k, you do have access to it. And even a TSP, you do have access to it. But I just had somebody recently tell me I'm talking to them about gold IRAs. And the reason gold IRAs and the idea of owning gold is asset preservation. If you're interested in generating income and you're going to compare us on that basis, you're not talking about apples and oranges. You're talking about apples and monkeys. So don't waste my time and yours, because you're not viewing this properly. We're not here to tell you to take away what puts bread on your table, money in your bank account that you live on and sustain your life. We're here to make sure that when things go south and the ship starts sinking, that we offer you a way of bailing yourself out and staying afloat to get through it.
We're talking about wealth insurance, because we're in a period of wealth destruction. We already started with the chart tonight showing wealth destruction. Let's switch real quick to this. Fixing the Social Security Ponzi, okay? Social Security right now, folks, is $29 trillion unfunded. $29 trillion. Now, I'm 57, I think. I don't even know what the rules are. I got to go look them up. I don't even know if I could take Social Security at 62, that's 57, 58, 59, 66. That's 5 years away, right? So I don't even know if that's going to be possible. And then when they do, it's probably going to be mean tested, right? What's your income? I don't know how they're going to do it. I mean, I can't imagine in 5 years they're going to just let me start taking money out of Social Security, send me a check every month. I can't imagine 5 years from now that as bad as things are. But $29 trillion underfunded. And here's a great article by Peter, how do you say his name? Saint Onge? Trump wants to convert Social Security from a congressional slush fund into real assets you own, like an IRA plus 401k. The difference could mean $60 trillion for the American people, more than the national debt. This matters because Social Security is going bankrupt, with trustees saying we've got just 6 years until benefits are cut up to 25%. Well, what did I just say? I haven't even read this article. I just found it while Michael and I were talking. I haven't even read it till right now on the air. And I just said 5 years from now, you think they're going to let me take my money? It's going to be mean testing. Voila, first paragraph. Within 6 years, they're going to have to cut at least 25%. Because Congress blanked away every social security dollar on recreational wars and NGO grants, leaving Social Security the mother of Ponzi schemes with an estimated $29 trillion of unfunded liabilities. Well, he's got the number right, 29 trillion. Again, I didn't know what number he was going to come up with because I haven't read the articles now. But he and I are saying the same number, which because that's what we know to be true.
Yep.
Here's the Democrat solution. Naturally, is tax hikes and cutting off wealthier people who paid most Social Security taxes. Well, there you go. Exactly what I was saying. Cut people off who worked their whole doggone life paying into this corrupt, disgusting federal government. I hate the federal government. Disgusting what they've done.
Well, you're absolutely right. What's really going to happen is they're never going to get rid of Social Security because that's a political issue. That's how they get elected. They play to the senior citizens by telling them somebody's going to get rid of your Social and scare the heck out of you. The gateway that even Trump started matching around with, he started mentioning 401ks and everything. The little gateway that they have, I told you, is trying to take control of your retirement money. There's $40 to $60 trillion in retirement money. They grab it up, they give you a credit into your Social Security account, you get a bigger check that they can Ponzi around with the new money because they'll blow that. And at the end of the day, you will still have your Social Security, but you will lose control of your retirement dollars. That's why Reagan created precious metals IRAs, so you own things that they did not have access to. We are trying to build up your own self-righteous wall of security against your assets. And if you're over 65 years of age, instead of somebody to be looked up to, that you saved, you're responsible, you did a good job, you are nothing more than dinner. You are dinner. And to be naive enough to think, okay, well, I'm getting all this, my broker's doing good. All these brokers, it's a setup. You've been doing good for years. Why is the market just continually going up? It just doesn't make sense. It's because it's just leading the lambs to slaughter. That's all. When it finally gets to a point where they take things over, things will get a little bit crazy. And the people in New York, the hedge fund managers, the brokers, your broker who is trained to just have you keep it, they will not lose a dime. They won't lose anything. They'll be part of the brilliantly run elite, which they were in 2008. They didn't lose money. We did. So all I can tell you, Brandon, is I don't believe in the end in Social Security. I believe in the takeover and the restructuring of the retirement industry, because that's exactly what they said in that article. I said it before. I keep warning you until it happens. Until it happens. And then we talk to people and we try to help them to get it done. And then they talk to their broker. Oh, that's ridiculous. You don't want to own gold. My comment, I'll make a simple comment to you geniuses out there who say you don't want to own gold. I don't hear of any central banks buying stocks. I don't hear of any central banks sitting back, setting up to set up our financial system by the government. Why did they put us under gold in the 1790s? Our forefathers, why didn't they put us under stock certificates or some other thing? Because they believed in tangibly based assets. They believed in financial responsibility. If you had debt, you went to debtor's prison or you became an indentured slave. You didn't call Johnny Smith bankruptcy lawyer. So you better come to the reality that you better plan ahead. And if you don't, we'll be here to help you. Just get less and have less. That's all.
Mm-hmm. All right, get your free packet, no obligation, worldviewgold.com, worldviewgold.com, and find out how to put gold into your IRA. Get some of your assets off the bullseye because the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America, are already telling you they want to come steal your stuff. The socialists are telling you, shocker, socialists want to steal your stuff. They're already telling you they want to steal your stuff. So if someone's saying, hey, we're going to come and get your stuff, why would you not do what's available now by law, which is by numismatic, 1933 and older, that's off the record, off the books, and put it where they can't get their grubby little demonic, satanic hands on it? Why would you not do that now? Closing comment on that, Michael?
Absolutely right. The point is acting versus reacting. And when you can see, when we laughed when Mandani was first running for office and then the idiot wins, the scary thing is you got people in Wisconsin. That's why I say stand up. You got a woman who's a communist socialist running for your governor. You got a jerk on my home state running for Senate and all the rest of them that stand to win, to be in our own Senate House, who hate our government, hate our people, hate us. And then we got a husband and wife team in New York, which are a bunch of buffoons, going to oversee the 25th anniversary of 9/11. 30,000 Americans died and thousands died from it afterwards. And we're having a communist socialist and a Muslim who is favoring the people who did it and calling this whole thing in the 911 fake, overseeing that. Shame on all the people in New York for doing this to these people's names and rights. And firefighters and police officers should stand up to this. God, oh, this is horrible what's coming up. Horrible. So my final statement is get yourself going. You don't want to do business with us? That's great. Do something or take a hit and learn to live with it. Your lifestyle will change. Talk to the people in Cuba. My brother-in-law's family moved here. His father was a doctor. He had a wonderful home, wonderful business, wonderful practice. And overnight, he had nothing. Nothing. Had to get on a boat and pay whatever he had in jewelry that they hid to get gold and jewelry to get out of Cuba to come to this country. And then became a janitor. You don't believe things can happen until they are. You got a communist running New York City, the biggest city in the world, and it's a disgrace. And you've got somebody coming into Washington, D.C. to run that city who's a socialist because the young kids are being allowed to be told, oh, God, capitalism is terrible. Shame on all of us who are seniors right now, or mature citizens, as I call myself, who are not getting into our children's face and telling them, get your kids by the neck and start straightening them out. And if you don't like your teachers, get rid of them. Do something about it. I'm done.
I'm done. Michael Weiner, worldviewgold.com, worldviewgold.com. Thank you, Michael.
Good night, Dolly. You're allowed to play with Brandon a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. She's finally gone back to her bed and laid down. I don't know what that was all over here, but she was very intrigued by the chart. All right, guys, we'll be right back after this break. Joining me now is Bob Cornuke, Bob and Larry. Remember Bob and Larry? This was the announcer, the guy that was the announcer for narrator for one of his videos. It's the guy that played in Indiana Jones. Anyway, Bob joins us now. That's how he talked, by the way, if you didn't know. Remember that? Bob and Larry.
Speaking about John Rhys Davies from Raiders.
Yes.
And we called him to do the, I did a documentary on the Lost Ark of the Covenant. And we called him up and he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, we'd like to do a program on the Ark of the Covenant. He goes, well, I know a little bit about that one.
He's got an amazing narration voice, I'll tell you that. All right, Bob, I saw this today and thought of you. Charred wooden beams from First Temple destruction found in Jerusalem's city of David. Find comes just days before the Tish B'Av, which commemorates the destruction of the temples. Now, this is dated today, July 20th, 2026. And I thought, wait a minute, what is the temple doing in the city of David? And I think it's talking about the second temple. Yeah, it is, the second temple. The destruction of the first temple was in 586 BC. And no, this is the second temple. announced Monday that the beams which were burnt during the destruction of the first temple in 586 BC were uncovered during excavations by the Israel Antiquities Authority and Tel Aviv University in Jerusalem. I think I have a video here, folks. Listen and watch this, and then have Bob respond, because this is in Bob's wheelhouse. That's why I thought of him today.
אנחנו נמצאים בחפירות חניון גבעתי בגן לאומי עיר דוד, חפירות משותפות באוניברסיטת תל אביב ורשות העתיקות. בימים האחרונים אנו חושפים קורות עץ שרופות מחורבן הבית הראשון. למזלנו הקורות האלה השתברו במצב
All right, so there you go. I don't understand, but talking about the beams. But let me just go with the footage. Let's go with the footage and let Bob talk about it while we go with the footage, because the B-roll is pretty amazing in of itself. Bob, how do we have these beams about 300 yards down the hill from what is known as the Temple Mount today? Now, is there a dispute as to where the temple was?
Yeah, there's always been a dispute where the temple is. Unfortunately, the Jews have decided to take a viewpoint of it being from the Temple Mount, and that is the view, the biblical view that they take, is that it was from the Temple Mount, or traditional Temple Mount. They named it the Temple Mount. So it's hard to argue with anybody, because once you put your feet in that wet cement and let it calcify, there's nothing that's going to take you out of that paradigm of thought. But the Bible screams, and I could read right now for you for 3 minutes straight, biblical verses saying the temple was in the city of David. Josephus says it was there. Aristeas says it was there. Tacitus says it was there in the very center of the city. Scripture says all over that it was there. So why do we have something that's ensconced as being the temple? Well, during the Crusades, they went over and conquered what I think is the Roman fortress Antonia, and today, which eventually was the Roman fortress Antonia, and the Crusaders said Templum Domini, which means house of the Lord, and so from that point on, they've just accepted it. It's a comfortable thing. They go to the Western Wall and they pray to it. The Western Wall, they say, was built by Herod. It was not. We found Elias Shukran, the guy I work with, an associate of mine, found a coin at the very lowest level. It was from Valerius Gratus, who's the prefect of Rome under Tiberius Caesar. That was 25 years after Herod died. So he didn't build that Western Wailing Wall. That wall up there is probably more or less built by the Ottomans and a major portion of it, or it was built by the Romans, because I found an inscription that says the 10th Roman Legion right at the entrance, really close to the Western Wailing Wall. More recently, they found underneath there an odium, which is where they played dice. So the Romans would play dice there. They certainly would do that at the foot of the temple. But the scripture says that the temple is in the city of David. Scripture says, in fact, Psalm 46:4 says that it's in the city of David by the Gihon Springs, and that's where the temple was. You can check that out. It's where the city of God is, which is the city of David. It just says it right there. So the problem is that we have people that are so stuck in their paradigms of tradition that they can't break away. And so that's been the hardest thing. And F.F. Bruce said it best. I've taken a lot of criticism from this, but I've got a lot of people following me now. And a lot of criticism come to me. And F.F. Bruce says, the cause of learning is by those scholars who are willing to expose their brainwaves to the pitiless criticism of others. That is the problem right there in a nutshell. Scholars want three things. They want to be promoted. They want to be published. They want to have prestige. And if they go outside what the normal safe harbor of mutual consent is, and they go out in the choppy waters of discontent, they don't want to do that. They're sitting in their chairs at their universities, and they all agree to agree. They footnote in the back of a book saying, well, I wrote a book on the temple, and it's footnoted with 3,000 footnotes. Well, you got 3,000 guys that agreed with you, is all you did. You don't put in all the footnotes that disagree with you. They stay away from that. So these scholars, and I've been, and some of them are well known, have just done horrific things to attack and to keep the truth from getting out there. It's one of the saddest things I've ever seen is that the marketplace of truth has had a shell put over it, and people can't get to it most of the times.
The article at All Israel News says that the wooden beams were miraculously preserved for approximately 2,600 years by plaster that melted from the walls of the building, sealing the burnt wood beneath it. The building, which was located near the Temple Mount, collapsed during the intensive fire that destroyed the temple. So, as I understand it, this is supposed to be, I don't know, an administrative building that was attached to the temple. What do you? Because some reports say it's not the temple, it's an administrative building that was attached to the temple. Well, were the administrative buildings going all the way 300 yards down the hill? Because the city of David's about 300 yards down the hill from the Temple Mount, right?
Well, the temple was in the city of David. The administrative buildings around it were small. They were more like offices because they have found Bula in the city of David with names from scripture of people that worked in the temple. That's not out for general consumption. And I can provide those for you. I don't have my notes out here, but there's Bula that you can go that have been found in the city of David of names of people that worked within the temple. And it burned along with this beam that was the supporting roof of the temple, possibly or probably in the city of David. Scholars can take things and they can twist. They can put the Bible in a blender and come out with anything they want to say. You know that. I know that. The Democrats do it masterfully. Truth is really not the end result. It's having people that follow them, support them, give them prestige. The universities gives them promotion, and publishing houses publish what they do, or they get publishing their papers through a scholastic review.
So tell me about Josephus saying that the temple was in the city of David. Tell me more about that.
Well, Josephus was an eyewitness. Okay, now to discount Josephus, people have had to say, well, he shined the apple pretty good when he talked about the Roman, aristocracy, and he did. But you can never find a problem that he's had with prepositions or placements. He's always been right on to where things are located. And so Josephus talks about the ancient walls of the temple going around through the Tyrophian Valley on the western side, going down to the Pool of Siloam, which was just discovered by a good friend of mine, Eli Shukaran. He takes claim for it, but really a backhoe hit some steps and he went cleared away. But Eli's incredible. He really put the pieces together. He's a brilliant guy. He's a very good friend of mine, known him for years. Then the wall goes up the eastern side of the city of David, and it connects with the ancient walls, which I think are which are Nehemiah's walls that were repaired, going up to, it says, to the Ophel, and at the Ophel is still in the city of David, but it's on it's the no man's land between the Temple Mount and the city of David. It's right there is where the eastern cloister of the temple was located. He put a pin in the map so precise. And what is underneath that pin? It's the Gihon Springs. And what does the Bible say about the Gihon Springs? It's the place of the temple. You needed to have running water to wash the priests to get into the temple to do their priestly duties. You have to have running water. There is no running water, zero, not a drop up on the Temple Mount up there. That's the Roman fortress. And again, I found an inscription up there that said the 10th Roman Legion is where it was stationed up there. So that big, huge, massive area you see up there where the gold dome is, they say is the temple placement. That's the Roman fortress Antonio. South of there, about 600 feet, is the temple location itself over the Gihon Springs. And many scholars say that it is the place of the temple in the Gihon Springs. Josephus, Tacitus, Aristeas, they all talk about it.
So what do you make of those who say, because if you put this into like a search engine and ask about Josephus saying where it was, they'll say, oh no, that's a misrepresentation of what he was saying. He just meant Zion.
Well, Zion is the place of the temple. When David took the city of David, it was the Jebusite fortress. And that Jebusite fortress is where he bought the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And scripture says that Solomon built the temple right there. Scripture tells us it was over the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. That was in the Jebusite fortress. When that was written, there was nothing up on north of there, up on the Temple Mount. There might have been a couple of old kind of worship centers or some buildings up there, but there was no water up there, and that's not the place of the temple. I think this is the biggest mistake in history in the world, and it's the most clearly debunked thing in the world. Yet people have tradition, and Jesus says 13 times in Scripture about tradition, and almost every one of them says that it's wrong to have tradition. Jesus says in Mark 7:13, your traditions will nullify the word of God. And that's exactly what we have here. Is tradition is wiping out the word of God. People have been following and saying that that big gold dome up there where the Muslims have the mosque or the gold dome area there, it's not the place. That was a Roman fortress, Antonia.
All right. So when the headline at All Israel News says charred wooden beams from First Temple destruction found in Jerusalem, city of David, what did you think about that when you read this article? Did anything jump out at you today when I sent you this article?
Well, first of all, the seal, you see, the temple has a lot of components to it. And I'll give you a brief summary. People are going to say, oh, you left this out. Okay, I'm not going to say everything about the temple, but I'll tell you pretty much the thumbnail sketch. The temple was built out of stone. It had a lot of wood veneers in the floor and the ceiling and the walls. It had a lot of carvings in it. The front doors were olive trees, or they call them the oil trees. We have a fir as being on the walls and part of the flooring, but specifically the roof portion. When you build stone walls, you can't build a stone ceiling. It's impossible. So throughout history, we've had to put beams across the ceiling. You go in your house today, you're going to have beams of some are metal, but most of them are wood, trusses and things. But these beams supported the roof. And because it was such a large structure without interior support walls, they had to put the big heavy beams on there. And so these beams are talked about as being, it's from the cedars of Lebanon. If you go up north to Tyre, which is a mighty city, and you had a King Hiram there who was very friendly to Solomon, and he says, hey, I'll provide you with the beams. And so they slid them down the mountains to the water at Tyre. They made barges out of these big beams, and they floated them to Jaffa. And there Solomon transported them by land to build the temple. But that's how those beams got from up there from Lebanon to there they floated them down all the way down to Jaffa. Pretty ingenious way. And then Solomon took them and had them instituted into the temple itself. But these beams, I read in the article, and I haven't been there. I've already made a phone call since I've talked to you, Brandon. I'm going to be interviewing and involved with and I'll be able to see those beams, because I just had dinner a week and a half ago with Yosef Garfinkel, he was at one time the head of archaeology in the Hebrew University. He's now heading up, interestingly enough, the dig at the Ophel, and I'm asked to be a part of that, and we're working on getting me to be a part of that. But I just had dinner at his house, and he's a pretty interesting guy, and so he's an authority on this. These big beams are ancient old beams. What do I mean by old beams? They were big. They couldn't even count all the tree rings in them, which means they were massive trees that were brought. Now, when you go to Jerusalem today, you don't have massive trees. The front door of the ark, for instance, was of the temple was made out of the oil wood or the olive trees. Then we have other like fir trees in there, and a lot of gold plating on everything. When the temple was burned down, there was so much gold that the Romans went there and dug it up, and it even crashed the gold market in Rome at the time. They had so much gold that they dug out of there and absconded with it. But these beams, what's interesting, they should have decayed. They're organic. They're 2,600 years old. They're probably in 586, 587 when the temple was destroyed by Titus. and it was burned down, these were preserved. And no, wait a second. Isn't it great that God would preserve these for us now to give us clarity as to where things are located? I think this is amazing because the plaster melted and encapsulated the wood and preserved the wood. Now, the thing is, are they going to date this? They're going to try to do it. I'm hearing from the Wiseman Institute where I've been and worked with them. It's hard to date things that have been burned because there's so much carbon in there. The next thing is, are they from Lebanon? And I think that someone that has a forestry botany kind of background can go in and determine that in time. But I'm going to be over there now interviewing them. I just sent over my request as a journalist to interview them and find out and actually see the beams myself. And I could be doing that in the next month or two.
Well, will you come back after you go over there and see that? Will you do that?
I'll do it on site. I'll do your show on site.
That'd be great.
I was like, I'll just do it on site and we'll have an interview right there live. We'll just time it or you can record it. But I've been over there now for a month and a half to Israel. I've been crawling around caves and tombs in the area of the Qumran caves. We've uncovered something that's really amazing. I'm not at liberty to talk about it. I hate to be clandestine.
Well, by the way, Qumran, now, Logan, what's our buddy's name that we've interviewed? I just talked to him about a month ago to see if he had anything new. Jim Barfield. Yeah. Do you know Jim?
Yeah. I know of him. I hear he's a good guy. Yeah.
Yeah. He's from Oklahoma. We had him speak at our conference 2 years ago, and he's been working with some Israeli official because he had to get an official to help him do that. And they brought out a machine out there and scanned there in Qumran, and the readings were coming back what you would expect for gold and silver and other things. And he did a map, and he mapped it out, and it looks like kind of a replica of Jerusalem, he said. And
he
thinks,
I've met with him. I have talked to him about this.
He says he thinks that you might have the breastplate of the high priest with the 12 stones. He says you could have a massive amounts of gold, Solomon's gold. He goes on to talk about all the things that would be there that would just literally be priceless. But the massive amounts of gold alone.
Yeah, he's talking about massive amounts of gold. He's talking about the Copper Scroll treasure.
Yep.
Which is supposedly in that region. There's 64 locations. The Copper Scrolls were found in Cave 3 during 1958. In the back, they couldn't open it. Now the other scrolls were of parchment or they're on papyrus, and they were more prayers or prophecy. And they were very well written by people that had a high training intellect. But the Copper Scrolls, when they got those in Cave 3, they couldn't open them up for several years. But they found a guy in Manchester, England, and he sliced them into several pieces. And he just like tube you cut down, and he opened it up. And it's a treasure map. And it's really interesting because the Copper Scrolls are not written by someone of high intellect. It's somebody that used Greek and a lot of slang statements. And the first part was written very eloquently on copper, which is just about as much as gold in those days. And at the end of it was compressed and quick, like he had to get this stuff down. But he told about 64 locations, I think it is, of vast amounts of gold. No one's ever found it. People have been looking for it for a very long time, and it's scattered throughout that area of Judea and Jerusalem.
Yeah, so he even found an opening when he was there, and he showed us pictures. Like there was a hole going down into the ground that had opened up, showing that basically there's hollow space up underneath there on that mountainside. And he showed us pictures of all this. I might even have it in my, I might even have some of it in my
believe
email.
The gold is taken from the temple by the Essenes or maybe the Zealots. Took this and hid temple treasure. He talks about 64 bars of gold, talks about talents of gold at unimaginable amount. It's enough money to support the nation of Israel for 5 years. I mean, We're talking about 172 tons of gold. So I have explored over there. The last 2 weeks, I've been climbing all through caves and tunnels. I got more scratches on me, on my face, and cobwebs on my knees. And I can send you video of what we found when we get off air. keep it to yourself, and we'll show. We'll talk about it when it becomes more prevalent.
Okay, so without getting into areas you don't want to talk about, what do you think they're going to find underground there at Qumran?
Anything you see, we have. It could be that Qumran does possess one of those 64 locations, because why did the Assyrians build right on the area that they did on the Dead Sea? And I've traced the water canal that floods down through there. And they have big rains in Jerusalem, and if you take the water that comes out of the temple in the city of David from the Gihon Springs, the flow pattern goes all the way down to where the Qumran caves are. So this is where they probably harvested the water for their mikvahs, that they have a lot of water there. And it's probably a case, if they hid their papyri there, they probably hid some temple treasures that were taken out for protection in that area. We're talking about a lot of land there, but there's thousands of caves. I mean, I literally was over there. I'll send you videos of me crawling way down in the caves, and I'm just getting all beat up. And I mean, there's so many caves you can't believe through there.
Do you think that in Qumran, if they find all these caves, do you think you could find the tabernacle that was being carried around by the children of Israel? Do you think you'll find the Ark of the Covenant? What do you think is possibly there?
Well, I think I've written 2 books on the Ark going to Ethiopia, but there could be a copy of the Ark somewhere. And I'll tell you why there could be, because the Antichrist, it says in Scripture and prophecy, when the Antichrist goes into the temple and declares himself God, Scripture says that's going to happen. Has to happen soon. If you look at the, at the time periods that the Bible gives us, you're much more lucid on that point than I am, and knowledgeable, Brandon. But the Antichrist goes into the temple and declares himself God and stops temple sacrifices. And Scripture says something very interesting. It says he not only goes in the temple, but he sits in the temple and declares himself God. There's no furniture in the temple to sit on except for the Ark of the Covenant. So there could be a copy of the Ark somewhere out there. And I believe I make a strong case that the topmost of the Ark is in Ethiopia. But there could be a copy, a false man, a false Christ, in a false temple, on a false ark.
Wow.
So
you think the real top is in Ethiopia still?
I 100% I do. The new Narud over there I put through college, and I've got inside information. I'm the only one Westerner that's ever been involved with planning that St. Mary's of Zion church that's over there that houses the Ark, and they built a new one. I got the plans and actually helped them with that, and I'm swore to secrecy. I'm the only one that's on the committee. I'm the only one that knows the inside information, and I will not divulge. But I'll tell you one thing. I met with the president of Ethiopia, Nagato Nagaso, and gave him a flag. They went to the moon along with Mary Irwin, and he pulled me aside, said, "We've got it. I've seen it. I know it." My father was a Methodist minister that translated the Bible into Braille and brought it into Ethiopia. He says he was the president. He said, "We've got it 100%." The new Narud, who I put through college, named Gadefa, he's told me I know I believe they have it. I would bet everything I have that they have. Would I bet my life? No. Would I bet everything I have? Yes.
That they have the top. Only the top survived, or what?
Well, if you read in Zephaniah 3:10, it says, "From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliants, the daughters of my dispersed, shall bring my offering." My offering in the singular is always either the ark or the tabernacle. Then you have Isaiah 18 that says, "A great gift will be brought to Zion," which is where the temple is, and it'll be brought to Christ from Ethiopia. Okay, what was the Ethiopian eunuch doing down there in Acts 7 or 6 or 7 when he was going down? He had he was in charge of what? All the temple treasury from Candace, the queen of Ethiopia. He was the eunuch in charge of all the treasury. When he got down there, Philip contacted him and says, "Hey, no, Jesus isn't here. He's already gone. You're going to need to bring the ark back down, when the time comes. The throne. See, Jesus will rule and reign on the real throne in the temple, and the Bible says it's over the threshing floor. Why the threshing floor? The threshing floor is where you separate the wheat from the chaff. Okay, so what we have is Scripture tells us Jesus will wave his winnowing fan from the temple in the millennial reign. Oh, in the temple, he'll separate the wheat from the chaff. The wheat is those that are believers. Okay, and they go to heaven, which is the barn. Scripture says that's the analogy for the barn. But the chaff goes and gets burned. Those are non-believers that are going to hell. So Jesus is going to separate believers from the non-believers from the ark. Now, am I sure it's going to happen from Ethiopia? It makes sense. It's an interesting conjecture, but that's as far as I can go. I think if I had to bet, I'd say Ethiopia has the ark, and there's a fake ark that's going to come on the foreground within the next 48 months. Now, record this. The fake ark that Israel will take will be back in their possession within 48 months. Write that down, record it.
What makes you think the fake ark will be back in their possession?
That's what I can't tell you.
Oh, this sounds pretty interesting, Bob.
It is very interesting.
How close do you think we are to the time of the tribulation beginning?
Well, there has to be 3.5 years of good time. There has to be 3.5 years of being peace. And people are this guy's going to be, the Antichrist, going to be so charismatic and so ingratiating that the world's going to go to him. He's the one that's going to go into the temple after 3.5 years. Then we're going to have 3.5 years of the worst time the world has ever seen. And I think we're on the doorstep of that. I don't know the exact date, but I think we're very close. And I think people who are just really concerned with cars and buildings and going to, in their own lives need to wake up. They're going to be, when Jesus is waving his winnowing fan, you're either going to be written in the Lamb's Book of Life, or you're going to not. There's no spiritual Switzerland. You're either on or off the ark. I use the analogy many times, Brandon, you've heard me, of the Ark of Noah. It doesn't matter if we find the ark. The ark was a forerunner of Christ. If you're on that ark, you survive. If you're off that ark, you perish. There's no spiritual Switzerland. And we've got to get tough right now, because God is real. His promises are real. They're assured. They're chiseled in eternity. And this is not a wishy-washy God. He said black and white, okay, what we need to do to be saved and what we need to do to be not saved. And the world is just as in the days of Noah. What are they doing? They're marrying and just living their lives every day. And they're not following Scripture as their roadmap and their compass.
Mm. I want to go back on the Ark of the Covenant. So you think that Israel will end up with the next 48 months with the fake Ark of the Covenant? Where do you think the real?
They'll accept it as the real one. They will accept it wholesale as the real one, Brandon. They'll accept it as the real one.
But okay? You think it's a fake, and you think the real one, at least the top of it's in.
I know it's a fake. I think the right word is made. There was a copy made. Every time you have a vacuum and people are so spiritual, they'll invent it. They'll invent a place where the temple is. So they take the Temple Mount, and when everybody agrees, they all worship it. Okay, that's the problem. Is tradition fills that vortex of need to be able to brush by something that's spiritual. They want to be where common ground was turned into holy real estate by a divine occurrence, and they'll do anything to fill that void. 95% of the things you see in Jerusalem today on tours are the wrong location. Hate to tell you that. They're shrine and gift shop tours. You want to go have a shrine gift shop tour, fine. But you used to be like Bereans and read what Scripture has to say about.
I mean, they don't
locations.
know where the tomb of Jesus really is, do they? I mean, they got like 3 of them over there, don't they?
They have. Okay, let's go. You want me to talk about those? How much time do we have?
Go ahead.
Okay, you have the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Helena went over there. She has since been canonized by the Catholic Church as a saint. She went over there. She was the mother of Constantine, who was the emperor of Rome. We're talking about 325 AD. And she went over there with the specific purpose of finding the cross of Jesus. That was her job. So she went around and she talked it up, and she says, well, I have a vision and a dream. And she goes into the area of what is the Church of Holy Sepulchre today. And there's a guy named Judas who came out of the crowd, a Jew, common name, not the Judas we see it from Jesus. He comes out of the crowd and says, let me show you where it is. He goes over, he takes a shovel, he digs up, and he digs 3 large crosses. That's the first problem. 3 large crosses. We're talking a cross that size has been estimated by a scholar in Sweden to be 300 pounds. So when Jesus was beat with an inch of his life, he had to carry this 300-pound cross all through the city and everything else. No, he carried a patibulum, which was the crossbar. The stipend, or the centerpiece of the ark, was in the ground. So she goes over, and first of all, the problem, she says, this is where it is. And how did they know what cross was from Jesus? Well, they took the one cross and they gently set it on an old woman who was sick. They took another one of the crosses, they set on another one who was sick, and they took another cross, and she jumped up and she was healthy. So that became the cross of Jesus. Since been lost to history, but there's enough splinters of it in every Catholic church in Europe to build according to who was it who said it? Calvin said that you could build a Spanish galleon with all the pieces of wood that they have that are said to be from Jesus's cross. So we have a problem there. Now, that location of the Church Holy Sepulchre being the tomb of Jesus and the place where he was crucified is wrong, because if the temple was in the city of David, or even up on the Temple Mount, it's on the west side. And what does Scripture say? The centurion was on the east side when he saw the temple curtain split in half. And he said, surely this is the Son of God. He saw the temple curtain split, the rocks quaked, the tombs, the rocks split open, the tombs were there, all split open. And that was all talked about as being east of the temple, which I believe is in the city of David. Some believe it's on the Temple Mount, but it's not west of there. Now, what do we have? The other place that people go to, they go to Gordon's Calvary. And they go there. Gordon was a general in 1800s, and he's famous for the movie Khartoum. He was killed at Khartoum. He was made a national hero. He was more popular. The only person more popular in England than him was Queen Elizabeth at the time. So he was in a hotel over there, over there when he was over there, and he looked out the window and he saw 2 holes in the side of a cliff, and he said, "This looks like a skull to me," because Scripture says there's a place of the skull at Golgotha. Well, wait a second. The Romans never named anything off of a rabbit or a skull or a chariot. They always name things after people. Every site over there has the name of a people. Fortress Antonia was named after Mark Antony because he was good friends with Herod. So we have Antonio, over the Fortress Antonia, which housed the 10th Roman Legion and other legions over time. So that is not the place, because there's a tomb there that is that Gabriel Barkey, who's the head guy. I have him on tape. He died since, but boy, he was an incredible scholar. He was an expert. He was in the tomb. He did a whole research project on that tomb where people go in today, and that's from that was 7 centuries new from when Jesus was born. So you got a tomb that's 7 centuries before Jesus. The Bible says it was a fresh cut tomb. It was provided by Joseph of Arimathea. So this fresh cut tomb is ridiculous. He said, Gabriel Barkey said, this was 700 years old when Jesus was born, let alone a fresh cut tomb for Jesus. But the reason that the Church of England hated the Catholics at the time, and they said, we want to have our site for where Jesus was buried and where he was crucified. So they went back to Charles Gordon, said he was such a famous man. So we're going to build this whole area up as being the Garden Tomb. So if you go there today, it's full of beautiful plants and flowers, but at the time it was just cactus and spiders and nothing else. They went over there and put water in there. The Church of England bought the property. They dressed it all up. They claim that tomb as being the tomb of Jesus today, and that the right next to it, where there's a bus station, there's 2 holes in the thing. That was nothing more than a Byzantine quarry with those 2 holes in there. I can show you faces all over Jerusalem that look like a skull, but that's the one that they wanted because they hated the Catholics. They wanted to build their own church, and they did. But really, the place of Jesus' crucifixion would be east, and burial would be east of the city of David. And we found split open tombs there that are you've seen the pictures of them. I've talked to you about this before many times. We have split open tombs, huge, massive 200-foot cliffs with massive tombs split open all the way. You can see the patio, you can see the columbariums in there, you can see the where the bodies were, and then it was split in half. It's exactly where the Bible says. It's absolutely amazing. I haven't really promoted this because I didn't feel that it was the right time, but that's there. I can provide photos for you when you edit this in.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Bob, you're always an interesting guy. Bob and I have been friends since about 1995. Was it 95 that we first met in DC, in downtown DC, in an office building, both working for the same think tank for a while? 94, 95, somewhere in there.
I need to say something about you, and I always do this. You are one of the brightest guys I've ever met, and you always want the truth to get out there. And even if you get hammered for it, you're a noble guy, and I'm just honored to be on your show.
Well, you're very kind. There are some people, I have one or two people, why do you interview him? Like, first of all, he's been a friend since 1995. We've been through a lot together, and I find his research very intriguing, lots of information. And why would I not want to hear all sides? Why would I only want to hear one side, right? I don't understand these people. They only want to hear one side. I'm like, I want to hear all sides, and then let me decide which one presents the best evidence. But boy, there are a few people who get upset. I have one guy that told me that as long as I interviewed you, he wouldn't speak for me anymore. I'm like, sorry.
No, I've had people, well, there's two ways to build the highest building in town, all right? One way is you work hard, go out, risk, put your money into it, travel, and build the highest building. The others sit on their tails and they knock the buildings down, and they make themselves higher than the building. So to make the highest building, either build it yourself or you knock them down. And that's what we have in our scholarly system. If you don't say what they put their whole reputation on, their whole identity on, I've got one scholar that wouldn't even allow me to go on the stage with him. He was so disgusted, and I had a lot of good things to say.
And they won't even debate. And some of these guys, I agree with them on 99%. I mean, 99% when it comes to Bible prophecy, I agree with them. It's like, so we can disagree on this, or I can say, I'm not picking either side. I'm listening to you. I'm listening to Bob. I'm listening to the evidence. I'm still open to what everybody is saying. I just want to hear both sides. Why would you want to discount someone else, presenting information? I like hearing.
I think I know what scholar you're talking about, because here's the deal: is he said he's not following what tradition says, and now I wear that as the thing. But the Bible is the North Star. The Bible is the compass. The Bible is the roadmap. The Bible is the mediator. The Bible is the arbitrator, and that's what I use. People need to be like the Bereans. Paul got up to the Bereans and said, "Don't believe me. All right, follow what I say against Scripture, and then you know if it's true or not." Folks, don't believe me. Don't believe Brandon. Don't believe anybody, your pastor. But unless you pass it through Scripture, if you pass it through the prism of Scripture and it comes out with a bright light, then you know it's true. Okay, so these scholars have such weak countenance. They want to be respected. They want to be published. They want people to think they're great. And when someone comes along and says, you might have had a wrong premise, they go crazy. And so if someone comes to me and says, Bob, I'll show you in Scripture where you're wrong, I'll change it. But it has to be from Scripture.
Here's his website. You guys want to find more. baseinstitute.org, baseinstitute.org. You'll find a lot of, there's one right there, Tradition by Bob Krenuk. Exploring the roots of church traditions. There's so much here. Base Institute. And this all started because I saw this. Charred wooden beams from First Temple destruction found in Jerusalem's city of David. Go back to base, go up to investigations. There you see Ark of the Covenant, Mount Sinai, Noah's Ark, Paul's shipwreck, and the temple. You can read all about it, all the books, videos, everything. baseinstitute.org. All right, Bob, as soon as you have more on Qumran, I want to hear about it. All right.
We'll go off air and I'll show you a picture.
Okay, sounds like a winner to me. All right. Thank you, Bob.
Bye.
Guys, we'll be right back. Don't go away. Here we go. Please get your pre-order in. The commentary, it's done. We finished up all the editing, all the footnotes, all the appendix, all the scriptural references in this will blow your mind. and it's not a cheap book to print. This is hardcover, 2-volume set. It's leather-like, it has a leather feel or look to it with gold printing. This is not an inexpensive. We could have done this paperback and gone really cheap. But we wanted to do something that was very professional and classy and historic looking, because this is historic. It's biblically historic. And we wanted something you could put on your credenza in your office or in your living room, built-ins, something that is of great value, and the contents of the page on the pages deserves this kind of treatment. So it's a 2-volume set. It is $125. We were at $99. So any of you that already got your pre-order in, you got a sweet deal, because we got the bid from the printer, and it is not inexpensive at all because of the quality of the binding, the printing, and the cover, and the gold stamping. In fact, someone said to me, Annie Cyrus said to me, you should make that $125. I said, no, I'm going to do $99. I'm going to go ahead and step on a limb and do $99, think that that's probably going to cover us for the printing. I would do $125, she said. Well, Annie was right once again. So it is $125, so it's $75 a book. No, that's not $75 a book. That is, some of you are really good at math. You've already done it in your head, haven't you? That's $125 divided by 2. That is $62 a book. But again, each book is about 1,000 pages. Okay? That is not out of the ballpark, not when you realize what we're paying for each book. So get your order in, because what we have to tell the printer now is how many copies we want printed. And so we would love it if you would get a pre-order in tonight. So next week we can tell the printer what we want quantity-wise. Okay? So please get that in right away. Okay? Worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. We need your support. This is a great resource for your family. It is a study guide and commentary for lay people. It is written in layman terms. It has a massive index and appendix in the back. This is for lay people. Any high school student could read this and know exactly what it is I'm talking about. I deliberately wrote this for high school through adult. In fact, J.B. Hickson said the other day, Brandon, I don't think there's another commentary out there like this. I said, no, and that's by design. It is think Tom Clancy meets a Bible commentary, because I took the news and the documented stories, and I wrapped those stories throughout this book and this commentary to say, this is the stage setting. Look at what the Bible says is going to happen. Now, you tell me how this news story isn't moving us to that direction. And when you read it, you're going to have a hard time putting it down, because it is like a Tom Clancy meets a Bible commentary. So please, we need to get you to get an order in now so that we can tell the printer how many we want, and it'll be a pre-order shipping this fall. So please get that in, and it's a great way to support us as well. We have a very reasonable profit margin in here, because folks, I've worked on this now for over 2 years. We spent thousands of dollars just on the editing. Can you imagine what it would cost to pay an editor to go through there and grammatically edit and to get this going? And then the page layout, the guy we had to pay to do the page layout. So there's a lot of money. And then the printing. There's a lot of expense to this. We could have just said, oh, we just did it as a PDF, get it online. But we want something we can put physically in your hands, because I like the physical books. And there's a study guide as well. You can journal in it. You can buy it and give it as gifts for Christmas. You can buy it and make notes in it, so your friends or family, if we're gone, you can say, hey, if millions of us have just disappeared, read this book, this 2-volume set book now. It'll explain everything. They will be able to understand it. They may not understand it in total because they're not saved at the time, But even the people that aren't saved who pick this book up are going to have enough common sense to understand what they're reading to a point. And maybe in the process they get saved. Maybe buy this for your unsaved friend now and say, you keep asking me questions about everything that's going on in this crazy world. This book will explain it from the Bible in layman terms. This is a very powerful evangelistic tool as well. So I hope you'll put an order in tonight. Join me now is Gordon G. Chang. Mr. Chang, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you so much, Brandon.
Well, I am very concerned about the folks of South Korea. My friend Dr. Doug Frank was just there, and he was going around with some of the former high-ranking government officials. I think we have a serious problem, and of course, you know where my heart lies. I think where yours is too. I'm very concerned about all people having liberty and freedom, but I'm very concerned about the persecution of people of faith. And so I know the churches in South Korea, some of them are mega churches, and the pastors have been standing up to this. And if we remember, Charlie Kirk was in South Korea a week before he was assassinated, and our mutual friend Bill Federer was there with him. All right, I'm getting reports about what's happening in South Korea, that they are on the verge of or already have changed their form of government. Is that true? What's the latest coming out of South Korea?
Yeah. Lee Jae-myung, who he believes he's the president, has been imposing severe restrictions on free speech. And right now, this is symbolized by Morris Tan, who was the ambassador for global justice in the first Trump administration. He's in South Korea. He's under an exit ban. He's not allowed to leave because while in the United States, he criticized Yi. And so right now, this shows you that it's not a free society. And that's why you have Korean patriots in the streets, because they know what's at stake. And this is existential for South Korea's democracy. You can argue that South Korea, with these restrictions on free speech, with the weaponization of the judiciary, is no longer a free society. Yi is, I don't know whether he's a communist himself, but he's surrounded himself with communists, with pro-North Koreans. From his statements, we can say that he abhors the United States. He called us oppressors. And clearly, this is someone who dislikes, abhors, maybe even hates the United States.
Now, is this footage from there? Do I have this correct? Is that from South Korea, Gordon?
That is.
And are these people at risk now of being filmed and identified, and retaliation, reprisals?
I think that they are. Right now, the government can't jail everybody because the crowds in the streets are large. They're primarily young, because the young in South Korea know that this is their society that they've got to live in. In South Korea, it's very interesting. There's a very clear segmentation of the populace. The oldest people are very pro-American, and that's because they lived through the Korean War. The people who are in their 60s and the people who are now in power, they believe that we were an obstacle to democratization. We weren't, but that's what they believe. And so they are very anti-American. And then you have younger Koreans, and they are pro-America because they know that it's only because of American troops in Korea that prevents the North Koreans from crossing the demilitarized zone. And that means that they realize that they've got to be on our side. So it's really a very tragic situation right now where you have the people in power hate us, and the rest of society loves us.
Let's go to China. What's the latest in China? What's the latest related to China's relationship with Russia, with Iran? Because that's, as we know, is all kicking up. We now have 17 American dead soldiers, 3 just over the weekend, as proxies for Iran attacked a military base in Jordan. Where is China on all this, continuing to provide drones and support to Iran?
During the war, China was supplying Iran with just about everything it needed to fight, except for combat troops. And so, for instance, those CM-302 supersonic missiles that Iran fired at the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group in March, those are Chinese. Every Iranian weapon with a microchip, or virtually every Iranian weapon with a microchip, either has a microchip that was manufactured in China or was sourced for Iran by Chinese intermediaries. And we know that China has been allowing the Iranians to use Chinese satellites to provide precise targeting data. So there's like a 99.999% chance that the 6 Americans who were killed on March 1st in that base in Kuwait, they were killed because China supplied the precise targeting data for Iran's missiles. So right now, the big issue is going to be the very fast missiles that Iran's been firing at us and our partners in the region. They're highly maneuverable in their descent phase. We don't know where they got them from. I mean, they could have come from China. They could have come from Russia. But certainly the Iranians did not develop them themselves. So China is still there, and we've got to get them out of the support of the regime.
What's the latest on Taiwan? I have a little speech here. I'm sure it's from Reuters. I'm sure it's not in English. Let's see here. Here we go.
We must work together to protect our democratic and free way of life, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te said on Sunday, as he urged members of his Democratic Progressive Party not to allow the island to become China's Taiwan. The ruling DPP champions Taiwan's separate identity from China. It's a position that frequently angers Beijing, which views the island as an inviolable part of Chinese territory.
All right, hold it there. So that is by Reuters, and they did provide translation, so thankfully. But the president there is calling on Taiwan's government not to give in to these folks, not to give in to China. And of course, this is a pretty big national security deal for us because so many of our chips in the U.S. related to technology and not just cars, but life-sustaining chips, right, for hospitals and hospital equipment and water treatment and water flow and I mean on and on and on. This is a big national security problem for us. I don't know how quick we're making the transition to build chip factories. I know President Trump's been working on that, but that's probably a few years off at least, right?
Yes, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, makes 92% of the world's sophisticated chips. The other 8%, by the way, are made in South Korea. So we could face, theoretically, the loss of 100% of the world's most important chips. Now, TSMC has about 6 fabs in Arizona near Phoenix. Some of them are up and running, but most of them are not yet. And in any event, they don't make the best chips. They make really good ones. They make better ones than we're making, but they're not making the world's best. And we have Intel, of course, where the federal government has taken an interest, ownership interest. That's now up and running as well, but we're still at least a couple years behind. And so we've got a lot to do. But Taiwan's more than just computer chips. Taiwan is a vibrant democracy, and as China's totalitarian state seeks to snuff out democracy everywhere in the world, we can't let the Chinese have Taiwan. Taiwan sits in the middle of our western defense perimeter, where the South China Sea and East China Sea meets. After the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan, Taiwan is a test of credibility of American resolve. And that's not just in East Asia, but around the world. I can go on, but the point is that Taiwan is really critical to the United States at this moment.
Where are we at with the economy, China's economy? I think I just read an article that they just bought like $9 billion in stock or something to prop up their economy. Is that right?
Yes. The so-called national team, which are state entities, have gone into the market and bought up stocks primarily of AI companies in order to support the Chinese market. The underlying issue is that the Chinese economy is stalling. So they reported 4.3% GDP growth for the second quarter of this year, but it's probably 0, maybe 1%. Certainly not fast enough to create the output necessary to retire China's debt, because China's going into a 2008 economy is in disarray.
And then they also have a population decline problem, right? Birth rates?
Yeah, they report 1.4 billion people. Some people say it's 1.3. By the turn of the century, the estimates are anywhere between 330 million and 894 million. It's probably going to lose 2/3 at least of its population before the time the clock strikes 2100. So this is going to be the fastest demographic plunge in history in the absence of war.
Let's go to the president's speech the other night on elections and hacking and turning votes, et cetera. And I got to pull out my little pad here, reporter's pad, because I was taking notes. And he was talking about China having 220, if I remember correctly, 220 million voter rolls, voter files here, 220 million. And then he mentioned, somebody mentioned, yeah, he did, China manufacturing ballots. So I'm sure you watched that speech with great interest, as we did, and carried it here and had people on before and after. We had on Sidney Powell. We had on Mike Lindell. I mean, people that have been very vindicated, in my opinion, after what we heard the other night. And now a lot of it's been released. And now we have the DHS secretary, warning these states, we're telling you what your problems are. And if you don't fix them before the midterms, we have the right to fine you, and some of you arrest you, throw you in jail. So China's very busy upcoming in the 2020. I think 2024 was too big to rig, in my opinion. And then now we have midterms coming. Talk to me about all that, because midterms are coming fast.
Yeah. 2020, the Chinese were certainly messing in the election infrastructure. They were also trying to change votes by, they did a number of things to disrupt the Trump campaign. So, for instance, the New York Times in March of that year reported that China was spreading false rumors about Trump about to impose the Stafford Act, which would basically have nationalized everything. And China knew that it was false. And Trump didn't do that, as we know. Also, they were using their social media bots on Facebook, what was then Twitter, Instagram, all the rest of it. China was openly fomenting violence on American streets, which is an act of war. And there's pretty good evidence that they were organizing demonstrators on the streets, engaging in violent protests. The list goes on and on. 2024 was interesting because, from what we can tell, the Chinese didn't mess in the national election very much, if at all. They devoted their efforts to state and local races. What they'll do in 2028, what they'll do this year, I just don't know. But clearly, China right now has the ability to certainly change things. One other thing they did in 2020, and that was they funneled contributions to the Democratic Party through Act Blue. These were money from foreign sources, which was illegal. And so they really went they really went in on Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders in the Democratic Party primaries. And they, of course, went over for Biden over Trump in the general election in 2020. And that's clear from a lot what we can see.
And then to think that this information about China or Russia, or Iran and others hacking on our elections, and President Trump mentioned those by name, not just China, but Russia and Iran. I think that is being scrubbed from his presidential daily briefing during his first term. Does that show just a hatred of Donald Trump? Or does that show that we have people in the intelligence arena that are loyal or bought off or blackmailed by China, Russia, or Iran, or all the above?
Yeah, probably all the above. I think it's more, there's a couple of things going on here, is my guess. I don't know. But I think that many people in the intelligence community were so meticulous. They were so afraid of criticizing China. And we saw this not only in what happened in 2020, But also, when President Biden authorized that study by the intelligence community of the origins of COVID, it came back with all sorts of conclusions that, it looked like that they were requiring proof that would be used in a court of law. That's not what their job is. Their job is to try to assess the facts and the truth. And the truth is that, COVID came from China. And there's a lot more about it that they didn't do. So I think you have an intelligence community that is, for a number of reasons, some understandable, some not willing to take on China. And if they're not willing to take on China, why do we have them in the first place?
I don't know if you saw this piece over at Wired. We reported on it last week. What happens if China hacks the U.S. water supply? And the writer, Andy Greenberg, he says, I went to a secret war game, burst water mains, evacuated hospitals, in a closed-door simulation. Insurers played out their response to a mass disruption by China's Volt Typhoon hackers and found a nightmare scenario. The water is used to cool some of the HVAC, and they've had to shut down. They had to, get people out of the hospitals because they didn't have enough, cool air during the summer months in their tabletop exercise. But it just spilled from there to a major catastrophe. And you're talking about 5,000 utilities here that were done in this war game. Have you read about this, and what are your thoughts? Because immediately I thought of Gordon Chang when I read it, and I said to the audience, this is what Gordon Chang has warned about. He's warned about the next war will be fought on our soil, right?
Certainly. And this is not theoretical, because we know that 2 years ago, Iran actually disabled the water system of Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, which is a small town near Pittsburgh. So they've done this already. And we know that they have the capability because we've seen the Chinese, through hacking, went into hospitals in Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, all sorts of places. The Colonial Pipeline, or a pipeline, not necessarily the Colonial Pipeline. And they also were hitting grid facilities. So, we know that they can do this. The story here, Brandon, is not so much the Chinese. The story is us. Because we've known for decades that they can do this. And we as a society have absolutely refused to protect our networks. So, the Chinese are villains. Yes, the Chinese can do all of this. But I'm much more interested in us than them, because this is our country and we don't have to put up with this. We don't have to have this. And yet we have utilities and others that are absolutely against erecting reasonable defenses against a known threat from a common enemy.
Now, we've got reports that China's continuing to buy up massive amounts of gold and dump U.S. dollars. Where are we at with China playing ball on the world economy? President Trump goes over there. He brings a lot of the big tech guys with him. Was he there inviting them to participate? This is where we're going. We're going to go down this road of cryptocurrencies and stable coins, and we're going to be very involved, and you can join us or not join us. Where is this going? Is China going to join the party? Are they not? Are they going to fight against us? Is BRICS going to fall apart? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and all of these different countries that want to join them. A lot of this, of course, is economic war, what's going on. So is China going to come to the table and work with us, or continue to work against us? What are your thoughts?
They're going to work against us. With regard to China dumping dollars, I'm not terribly concerned about that. And the reason is, yes, they want to replace the dollar as the world's reserve currency, but they really can't do it because their currency is not convertible on the capital account. And sometimes it's not even convertible as a practical matter on the current account. They have too much control over their currency. They can't challenge the dollar. They've been selling dollars, Brandon, but they have to. And they've been selling them because they need to support the renminbi. So, yes, they've been dumping dollars, but it hasn't affected the United States. It doesn't affect our real ability to raise debt. And so this is not a China story in the sense. We can tank the dollar. We're actually the only country that can tank the dollar by spending too much. So, again, this is a U.S. story, not a China story. And I'm not saying that the Chinese don't want to get rid of the dollar. Yeah, of course they do, but they just don't have the tools to do it.
Mm. As we get ready to wrap here, how concerned are you with the threats against President Trump from Iran? Newsmax is reporting that Iranian state media has published a new propaganda video explicitly threatening President Donald Trump, claiming to reveal details about his movements and motorcade security, while declaring that operatives could gain access to locations along his travel routes. How, you know, we're seeing, as we've already reported with you here and in other broadcasts together, China, Russia providing satellite data for Iran. How concerned are you that Iran and China are, China and Russia are doing the same when it comes to intel on the ground here? Not to mention, we still, I guess, have 100,000 military-age Chinese males in the country that haven't been rounded up. I hardly ever hear any talk about them, by the way. I don't know why we haven't found them and rounded them up. They must also be providing a lot of intel. They're grabbing on the ground, surveillance, all kinds of things. But how concerned are you that Iran's getting some of this tracking data on President Trump from China or Russia, or both?
I'm apoplectic. And again, look, we know these guys are here. We know who some of them are, and yet we don't roll up the networks. So, yeah, it's fine to go into a Home Depot parking lot and grab some, South Americans. And they shouldn't be here. But that's not the point. People who want to improve your kitchen are just not going to try and bring down the United States. But some of these other guys who've come in, they're here to kill Americans in large numbers. They're here to kill President Trump. And we know that with the increase of these Chinese males that have come across our border, there's been a noticeable uptick in Chinese incursions and attempted incursions into our military bases. We know the Chinese are behind some of the drone flights. And here I get angry. And I get angry at the Biden and Trump administrations. Give you an example. Remember, we had all of those drones flying over New Jersey, my state. And then we have the report from the Biden administration that was released by the Trump administration that said, oh, all of these are domestic drones. Well, I'm sorry, because a lot of people in my state saw these drones come in over the Atlantic. And that means these were not domestic drones. And yet you had the Biden administration covering for somebody, and you had the Trump administration helping them by releasing this information without comment. I mean, what can I say? We know that there are foreign actors involved in this because these drones did not come off of American soil. So let's get real. Let's get the president of the United States to talk to the American people about what's going on. There is a threat. We dealt with a similar threat in 9/11. See something, say something. That's what we need the FBI to do. Just one other thing. I think there's a third Chinese biological weapons facility that has not been found in our country for a lot of reasons. And you probably don't have the time to go into it. But the point is, we need the FBI to talk to the American people and say, look, there's one more at least. Tell us what you see, because if you see something, we may be able to find it. So far, the two Chinese biological weapons labs, they weren't found by the FBI or federal authorities. They were found by, citizens like you and me, who then went to the authorities and said, this ain't right. Please look at it.
And is this bigger? Is this lab bigger than the other two? The other one was in a garage, some kind of storage locker, and somebody's a government worker was vigilant and saw an extension cord running and called authorities. The other one was in a Airbnb house and something didn't smell right. It smelled like dead people or something, or smelled like a hospital or something. And so something tipped them off. This third one, now, by the way, this is the second interview at least where you've mentioned that third interview. And then you say, well, you probably don't have time to go into more, which tells me you know more. So tell me more. How big is it? What do you think's there? What do you think?
Yeah. First of all, the first facility was found in December 2022 by an alert building inspector who saw a hose connected to a building that was supposed to be abandoned. And inside, authorities found almost 1,000 mice that had been genetically engineered to spread disease. And by the official count, almost 20 pathogens, at least 20 pathogens, some of them for fatal, deadly diseases. There was a refrigerator marked Ebola, for instance. Ebola is important because we know that the Wuhan Institute of Virology, they're studying Ebola, which means they're trying to figure out how to weaponize it. And I don't think that they weaponize and are responsible for what's going on in Africa right now, but we can't exclude the possibility. Okay, so let's fast forward to January of this year. You have a housekeeper in a house in Las Vegas, and she reports to authorities that she and somebody else in the house were, quote unquote, deathly ill. So Las Vegas SWAT and the FBI raid the house, and they find like 1,000 vials of a reddish substance, which is probably what was making the housekeeper and the other person sick. And so they take that out. And then the FBI says, well, this is nothing to worry about. The reason why I think there's a third facility is because Reedley was found more than 3 years prior to Las Vegas. The stuff that was found in Las Vegas could not have been manufactured in Reedley. So the question is, where was it made? Was it brought into the United States? Maybe, but more likely it was manufactured in a third facility. So that's why I believe that we should be looking for at least one more biological weapons facility in the United States. And by the way, we're talking about weapons of mass destruction. So I think we ought to be a little bit more concerned than the FBI is right now.
So how big do you think it is? How state of the art? Do you think it's something that's more professional and ready to go, or still being basically run in a house or a storage locker?
It has to be bigger than a storage locker because they manufactured this reddish substance. I mean, we don't know what it is, but this is not something that you can do with a high school chemistry set. So I think it's probably more on the sides of Reedley than it is on the size of Las Vegas, but I'm just guessing. But when you start to put two and two together, you have to say it's more probable than not that there is a third facility in the United States, and there is zero evidence that the FBI is looking for it.
You know, I know people don't have the budgets. Some people don't. Others have the money to spend on what they want to spend money on. People generally, for the most part in America, spend the money on what they want to spend on, what they prioritize. I don't know about you and your family, but I got a room full of toilet paper. I got a room full of at least 2+ years of freeze-dried food. I picked up another 11 big old jugs of the water this weekend. You know, I'm constantly turning stuff over, resupplying, because if something happens, I'm not running out and standing in line with the masses and fighting over this stuff, number one, or you find it's not available. And number three, if something does happen, you don't want your loved ones out there standing in line with these folks. You want to shut the doors and, you know, shelter in place, as they say. But I'm not going to be running out because I'm always ready. I don't think most Americans, again, learn their lesson. In some ways, God really blessed us with what happened with 2020 in one regard. Not the toxic shot that's still, I think, hurting people, but it showed the American people what happens when you're not ready and what happens to our fragile just-in-time inventory.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every American should be prepared for 6 months.
Yep.
You know, the rule of fours, disaster relief workers. The rule of fours. Your brain can go for oxygen without 4 minutes. That's not relevant. Your body can go without water. And this is relevant. Your body can go without water for 4 days, and your body can go without food for 4 weeks. So you got to have enough water and food to last, I think, probably 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. Final topic tonight. This was back in May. Okay, and we reported this in May. And then I noticed last week, all these mainstream outlets reporting about 300 Iranian drones in Cuba. I'm like, why are you guys all reporting? Must be a slow news week. They're all reporting this like it's breaking news. We were covering it back in May. This site, Defense Security, was covering it, DefenseSecurityAsia.com. How involved do you believe China is with any of these Iranian drones? And how concerned are you that you would have these, I think these are the Shahed drones there in in Cuba when it comes to the threat to Florida. And of course, we know that President Trump doesn't normally spend a lot of time in Florida this time of the year. I think it's maybe too hot. He's over usually at his golf course in New Jersey, there where you're at, or his Virginia.
In my
course.
town.
What's that?
Bedminster.
Yeah, Bedminster.
In
right?
my town.
In your town. Okay. So how concerned are you with these drones being that close to the U.S. and Cuba? And is Iran involved? And then what does this mean for President Trump heading back for the winter, as he always does, to Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah. Every Iranian drone has got some Chinese guts inside, either Chinese microchips or microchips that were sourced for Iran by Chinese intermediaries. So, yeah, and we know that some of the Iranian drones are actually manufactured in China. So if we're talking Iranian drones, we should be talking China.
Are you concerned, as I am, about these things, these drones being on a launch base out off of Cuba? I mean, you said already we saw these drones in New Jersey. They seem to be coming out from the ocean. Well, what a perfect launching site would be Cuba.
Or a Chinese merchant ship. Yeah, China has at least 4 listening posts in Cuba. They took over the Lourdes facility, which during the Cold War was the Soviet Union's largest listening post outside Soviet soil, and they've got 3 others at least. And according to Wall Street Journal reporting, they were hoping to get a military base in addition to those 4 sites, hoping to get a military base in Cuba. Though I think the Biden administration sort of put the lid on that, though I'm only guessing just from what I can tell. So yeah, the Chinese are there, and we need to be very clear about this because the Chinese have made it crystal that they want to attack us.
So China is in Cuba.
Oh yeah, big time. And China was in Venezuela before Trump took out Maduro on January 3.
Before I promote your Twitter, you mentioned you're right there in New Jersey. You're in the same town as Bedminster. Do you ever have the chance to visit with him, to go over to the club and get 10 minutes in talking to his ear?
If he asks, I'm certainly willing to do that. And by the way, that's the rich side of town, Brandon. But yeah, if he asks, I'm more than happy to do that. And during his first term, we talked to him. Second term, we haven't. Not because of us, because of him.
And what do you think's changed? Advisors?
I think that he knows what I think. I know that because every once in a while he will say something either unkind or kind about me. So, for instance, last week he did it twice. Once from the Oval Office when he had all the reporters there, and the second time was at the NATO summit in Ankara.
What did he say? What did he say?
In the Oval Office, he talked about was TikTok, I think. He thought I was too negative. He thought I was too hard on him. And he talked about TikTok. And then Ankara, I forget exactly what he said, but he also said that he liked me.
Well, you're a likable guy. I've had you in my home. I've spent the weekend with you and your lovely wife. You also he has a crazy sense of humor. He could do a stand-up comedy act, folks. It shocked me when he spoke for us last October. By the way, we brought it to the Mid-South, our conference, for the first time in 21 years. And of course, we love the people of the South, but it's a very sleepy culture, and we did not have the turnout we wanted. We moved it this fall to Milwaukee, Waukesha, 800 seats already gone. 800 seats already gone, Gordon. We need the people of the South to wake up, though. They're sleepy here.
Well, because, they've had it too good for too long, I guess.
You got that right. You got that right. Well, here's the website right here, folks. Gordon G. Chang, at Gordon G. Chang. You got to get the G in there. You'll get the wrong Mr. Chang. At Gordon G. Chang. Follow him. He's got great books. He's author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. The coming collapse of China, and China is going to war. By the way, the one Plan Red, that's a book you could read in one setting, and you're going to get more information in that one sitting when you read it. than most of you have ever heard about what China is really up to. So it is an easy read, it's an important read, and it's a fast read. Gordon G. Chang, as always, thank you. Greet your lovely wife for us.
And thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate it.
You too. We always enjoy having Gordon Chang on. Great conversation, as always. Check it out. Follow him on X, at Gordon G. Chang. He's at about 441,000, almost 442,000 followers. I mean, he's going to be hitting 500,000 before you know it. Why can't we do that, Logan? What's the deal? We work so hard, and for some reason, we just cannot get traction on X. You think we're being shadow banned?